I collapsed on stage in front of 3,000 people. The doctors called my parents, but they never picked up. Only my grandfather came. What woke me up after surgery was not the pain, but a family photo posted online as if I never existed. If you have ever been the easy child, listen closely. My family did not come back because they missed me. They came back because they were terrified of losing what belonged to me. My name is Rose Wallace. If you had asked me 10 minutes before I walked onto the stage at Lakeview State University what the defining moment of my life would be, I would have told you it was this speech. I had spent 4 years earning a 4.0 grade point average, working 25 hours a week at the Harbor Light Cafe, and surviving on cheap coffee and sheer willpower just to stand here. I was the valedictorian. I was the one who made it. I was the proof that you could pull yourself up by your bootstraps, even when your family was busy looking at expensive shoes in a different aisle. But as I stood behind the curtain, listening to the dean drone on about the bright future awaiting the class of 2024, I did not feel like a winner. I felt like someone had wrapped a vise around the base of my skull and was slowly, methodically tightening the screw. It was a hot day in Maplebrook, Ohio. The air conditioning in the auditorium was struggling against the body heat of 3,000 people, but the sweat trickling down my spine felt cold, clammy. I wiped my palms on my graduation gown. It was a cheap polyester blend that trapped heat, suffocating me. And now, the dean's voice boomed, echoing slightly in the cavernous hall. Please welcome your valedictorian, Ms. Rose Wallace. The applause started. It sounded distant, like waves crashing against a shore miles away. I took a breath. It rattled in my chest. Just walk, I told myself. Just walk to the podium, read the cards, and get off the stage. Then you can sleep. You can sleep for a week. I stepped into the light. The spotlights were blinding. They pierced through my eyes and stabbed directly into the soft tissue of my brain. I flinched, just barely, covering it with a smile that felt like it was made of cracking plaster. I walked to the center of the stage. The wooden floorboards seemed to tilt under my heels. I gripped the sides of the podium, my knuckles turning white, using the wood to anchor myself to the earth. I looked out at the sea of faces. This was the moment. This was the part where I was supposed to find my loving family in the crowd, lock eyes with them, and share a tearful moment of triumph. I knew exactly where they were supposed to be. Row 3, seats 10 through 13. I had bought the tickets months ago. I had reminded them every week. I had sent calendar invites. I had texted the address 3 times yesterday. I looked at row 3. Seat 10 was occupied. My best friend, Tessa Reed, was there. She was leaning forward, her phone raised high to record me, her face a mixture of fierce pride and sudden, dawning worry. She could see something was wrong. Tessa always saw what others missed. Seat 13 was occupied. My grandfather, Walter Wallace, sat there. He was wearing his charcoal suit, the one he had bought for my grandmother's funeral 10 years ago. It was a little loose on him now, the shoulders slightly too wide for his aging frame. He sat with his back straight, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that burned, but between Tessa and Grandpa Walter. There were 2 empty chairs. Seat 11, seat 12, they were empty, not just empty, but gaping, like missing teeth in a smile. My parents, Brad and Kara Wallace, were not there. I felt a sharp, physical blow to my chest, harder than the pain in my head. I had known, deep down. I had known when Mom didn't answer my text this morning. I had known when Dad didn't call to ask where to park, but seeing the empty seats made it real. They had not just been late. They had not chosen to stand in the back. They were simply not here. The silence in the room stretched thin. The audience was waiting. I looked down at my index cards. The words swam. Welcome faculty, families, and friends. I opened my mouth to speak. Welcome, I croaked. My voice sounded wrong. It sounded like it was coming from underwater. A high-pitched whine started in my left ear, rising in volume until it drowned out the hum of the ventilation. The headache spiked. A sudden, violent throb that felt like a lightning strike behind my eyes. The vision in my right eye simply vanished, replaced by a wall of static. I tried to say the next word. Faculty. Fac. The podium dissolved under my hands. The floor rushed up to meet me. I did not feel the impact. I only felt the sudden absence of gravity, followed by a jarring vibration that shook my entire skeleton. Then, chaos. The sound of the microphone hitting the floor was like a gunshot. It fed back through the speakers, a screech of electronic agony that made 3,000 people gasp in unison. I was lying on my side. The wood was cool against my cheek. I tried to push myself up, but my arms were like wet noodles. They refused to obey. "Rose!" That was Tessa. I could hear her voice cutting through the murk, terrified and shrill. "Rose! Oh God! Someone help her!" "Call 911!" a man's voice shouted. It sounded like the dean. "Get the paramedics! Clear the stage!" I stared at the edge of the stage. A pair of polished black shoes ran toward me. Then the ceiling lights were blocked by faces. Strangers. Concerned. Panicked faces looking down at me as if I were a broken doll. "Can you hear me?" someone asked. A hand tapped my shoulder. "Miss, can you hear me?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say, "I'm fine. I just need a minute. Please don't make a scene." I was Rose Wallace. I didn't make scenes. I fixed them. I was the easy child, the one who didn't cause trouble. But my mouth wouldn't move. A wave of nausea rolled over me, heavy and suffocating. The blackness at the edge of my vision began to creep inward, eating the light. "I'm sorry." I thought, though I didn't know who I was apologizing to. I ruined the ceremony. The last thing I saw before the world went dark was the empty space where my parents should have been. The next thing I knew, I was moving, fast. The world was a blur of ceiling tiles whizzing by, and the rhythmic clatter of gurney wheels on linoleum. The air smelled of antiseptic and ozone. "BP is dropping, 110/70, pulse is 120 and thready. Pupils are sluggish, left side blown. We need a CT scan stat." I tried to turn my head. A neck brace held me rigid. I blinked, trying to clear the fog. "Rose?" A familiar hand squeezed mine. It was rough, calloused. "Grandpa." "I'm here, Rosie. I'm right here." "Grandpa?" I whispered. It came out as a slur. "Don't try to talk. Honey, just breathe." We burst through a set of double doors. The noise of the emergency room assaulted me. Phones ringing, monitors beeping, people shouting orders. "Trauma 1! Let's go! Let's go!" A doctor with silver glasses and a face made of stone loomed over me. He shone a light into my eyes. The pain was blinding. "Rose, I'm Dr. Aris. You had a seizure on stage. We think there is pressure on your brain. We're going to take some pictures, okay?" I couldn't answer. The pressure inside my skull was building, a balloon inflating beyond its capacity. I felt like I was being squeezed out of my own body. They slid me into the CT scanner. The machine whirred and clicked, a mechanical beast chewing on silence. I closed my eyes and focused on the darkness. I prayed for it to stop hurting. Please, just let it stop. When they pulled me out, the atmosphere had changed. The urgency had sharpened into something brittle and dangerous. "Massive hemorrhage," Doctor, Aris said, his voice low but carrying clearly to my ears. "Midline shift. It's a cavernous angioma that ruptured. We need to decompress immediately." Is she going to make it?" Tessa's voice. She was crying. "We have to operate now," the doctor said. "Who is the next of kin? We need consent for emergency craniotomy." "Her parents," a nurse said. "I have the numbers from her emergency contact form, Brad and Kara Wallace." "Call them?" "Doctor," Aris ordered. "Put it on speaker. We don't have time to waste." I lay there, staring at the sterile white ceiling, listening to the most painful sound in the world. Ring, ring, ring. It was the specific ringtone of a call going through. They had signal. Their phones were on. "Hi, you've reached Brad and Kara." My mother's voice filled the trauma bay. It was cheerful, light, breezy, the voice she used for clients and neighbors. "We are currently unavailable to take your call. We're probably out enjoying life. Leave a message and we will get back to you when the mood strikes." Beep. The silence that followed the cheerful beep was heavy. "Try the father's cell." "Doctor," Eris snapped. "Ring, ring, ring. This is Brad. Leave a message." Beep. "This is Nurse Hayes from St. Briar Medical Center emergency room." The nurse spoke into the void, her voice tight with professional frustration. "We have your daughter, Rose Wallace. She has collapsed. She requires emergency brain surgery. Please pick up. Please call us immediately." She hung up. She looked at the doctor. No answer. Straight to voicemail. "Try again, doctor," Eris said, stripping off his gloves. "We can't wait." "I am here." The voice was quiet, but it commanded the room. Grandpa Walter stepped forward. He was holding his hat in his hands, crushing the brim. His face was pale, the lines around his mouth etched deep with terror. But his eyes were clear. "I am her grandfather," he said. "Walter Wallace." "Sir, are you her legal guardian?" the nurse asked gently. "She is 22, but we usually need—" "Her parents are not answering," Grandpa said, his voice trembling with a rage I had never heard before. "They are not here. I am here. She is my granddaughter. If you need a signature to save her life, I will sign it. If you need someone to take responsibility, I am taking it." He looked at me, even through the pain, through the haze of medication beginning to flood my system. I saw the heartbreak in his eyes. He knew. He knew they weren't just busy. He knew they had chosen not to be reachable. "Doctor, Eris," the nurse said, "we have 2 failed attempts to contact primary next of kin. The situation is life-threatening." "Give him the clipboard, doctor," Eris said. Grandpa Walter took the clipboard. His hands shook so badly that the pen rattled against the paper. He took a deep breath, steadied his hand with his other hand, and signed, "Walter J. Wallace." "Do it," Grandpa whispered. "Save her." They began to move the gurney again. The wheels spun. The lights blurred into streaks. "Tessa," I managed to whisper. Tessa appeared at my side, running to keep up. Her mascara was smeared down her cheeks. She grabbed my hand. "I'm here, Rose. I'm not leaving. I'll be right outside." "My parents?" I mumbled. "Did they—" Tessa squeezed my hand hard, terrified to tell me the truth, but unable to lie. "We called. Rose, we called them 5 times. "Family isn't picking up," the nurse muttered to the anesthesiologist as they pushed me into the operating theater. "Prep the OR. We are going in solo." Those words circled my mind as the mask was placed over my face. Family isn't picking up. It wasn't just a statement of fact. It was the summary of my entire life. When I broke my arm in 3rd grade, Dad is in a meeting. When I won the state spelling bee, Mom has a headache. When I needed a co-signer for my student loans, "We don't think you should take on debt you can't handle alone." Rose, they were never there. And now, as my brain bled and the darkness threatened to become permanent, they were gone. The gas hissed. The sweet chemical smell filled my lungs. "Count backward from 10, doctor," Eris said. 10. I thought, I wonder where they are. 9. I wonder if they are having fun. 8. I wonder if they even know what day it is. 7. The pain began to recede, replaced by a cold, velvety nothingness. The last thing I heard was the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor, slowing down as I drifted away. And the very last thought I had, before the blackness took me completely, was a strange, detached realization. If I die on this table, they won't even find out until they check their voicemail. Darkness, then pain. It wasn't the sharp, stabbing pain from before. It was a dull, heavy throb, like my head was wrapped in thick cotton and someone was hitting it with a rubber mallet in slow motion. My mouth felt like it was filled with sand. My throat was raw, likely from a breathing tube. I tried to open my eyes. The light was aggressive. I groaned and squeezed them shut again. She's waking up, a soft voice said. Tessa. Give her a moment, a deeper, raspier voice replied. Grandpa. I forced my eyes open again. The room came into focus. White ceiling, white walls, a window with the blinds drawn, letting in slivers of gray afternoon light. I was alive. I turned my head slowly to the left. Grandpa Walter was sitting in a plastic chair that looked far too uncomfortable for a man of his age. He was asleep, his chin resting on his chest. He was still wearing the same suit from graduation. His tie was undone, hanging loosely around his neck. He looked exhausted, older than I had ever seen him. Tessa was curled up on a pull-out cot in the corner, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, and her eyes widened. She dropped the phone on the blanket and rushed over. Rose? She whispered, as if afraid to break me. Oh my God, you're back. Water, I rasped. She grabbed a plastic cup with a bendy straw and held it to my lips. I drank greedily. It was the best water I had ever tasted. How long? I asked, my voice sounding like gravel. 3 days, Tessa said, brushing a strand of hair off my forehead. Her fingers were gentle. You've been out for 3 days. Doctor, Aris said the surgery went perfectly. They got the mass out. It was benign. You're going to be okay. 3 days. I looked at Grandpa. He stirred, sensing the change in the room. He blinked awake, saw me looking at him, and a smile broke across his face, a mixture of relief and profound fatigue. Rosie, he choked out. He reached for my hand. You scared the life out of me, kiddo. I'm sorry, I whispered. It was my reflex. Apologize for existing. Apologize for being a burden. Don't you dare, Grandpa said sternly, though his eyes were wet. Don't you ever apologize for this. I looked around the room. It was filled with flowers, a bouquet from the cafe staff, a balloon from the university, a card from my professors, but there was no one else. Did they come? I asked. I had to know. Tessa and Grandpa exchanged a look. It was a look of pure, unfiltered anger. No, Grandpa said. His voice was hard. They didn't come. Did you tell them? We told them, Tessa said, her voice shaking. We left messages. The hospital left messages. We told them you were in critical condition. We told them you were in surgery. And nothing, Tessa said. She picked up her phone. Her hand was trembling. They haven't called back. Not once. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Where are they? Tessa hesitated. She looked at Grandpa. He nodded slowly. You need to see this, Tessa said. I didn't want to show you, but you need to know why. She unlocked her phone and opened an app, Instagram. She held the screen in front of my face. It was a photo posted 3 hours ago. The location tag read, Blue Lagoon, Iceland. The photo was high definition, vibrant and beautiful. The milky blue water steamed against a backdrop of black volcanic rock. In the center of the frame, holding champagne flutes, were my parents and my older sister, Sloane. They were wearing white plush robes. Their skin was glowing. They were laughing, heads thrown back in pure, unadulterated joy. Sloane was showing off her engagement ring, the diamond catching the Arctic light. The caption read, Finally disconnecting. No signal, no drama, just us and the ice. Sometimes you just have to turn off the phone and focus on the people who matter most. Family First Iceland, Adventure Sloane. Said yes, peace. And quiet. I stared at the image. I stared at my mother's smile. It was the same smile she used to give me when I brought home a report card with straight A's. Brief, distracted, and performative. But here, in the lagoon, it looked genuine. She looked happy. They were happy. While I was bleeding out on a stage, while Grandpa was signing a consent form with shaking hands, while Tessa was sleeping on a hospital floor, they were drinking champagne in Iceland. They blocked out the world, Tessa said, her voice dripping with venom. They literally put their phones on Do Not Disturb for 3 days so nothing would ruin their trip. I looked at the date of the post. It wasn't a throwback. It was live. They were there right now. I handed the phone back to Tessa. Something inside me broke, but it wasn't the kind of break that shattered into pieces. It was the kind of break that happens when you snap a glow stick, a sharp crack, followed by a cold, chemical light. I didn't cry. I had cried enough over them. I had cried when they missed my sweet 16. I had cried when they forgot to pick me up from the airport. I had cried when they gave my college fund to Sloan for her startup that failed in 6 months. I was done crying. I looked at Grandpa. He was watching me closely, his hand resting on a thick manila envelope on his lap. "Grandpa," I said. My voice was no longer raspy. It was clear. "What is in that envelope?" He looked down at the envelope, then back at me. His eyes were dark, like flint. "Something your grandmother left for you," he said. "She told me to give it to you when you graduated, but she also told me to give it to you if I ever felt you were alone." He patted the envelope. "They aren't coming back for you, Rose," Grandpa said softly, "but they will come back for this. And when they do, you need to be ready." I looked back at the phone in Tessa's hand, at the smiling faces of the people who had given me life and then left me to fight for it. "I'm ready," I said, and for the first time in 22 years, I meant it. Let them stay in Iceland. When they get back, they are going to find out that the easy child doesn't exist anymore. To understand why my family was sipping champagne in a geothermal spa while I was lying in a neurocritical care unit, you have to go back 4 weeks. You have to rewind the tape to a Tuesday afternoon in April, the day I drove home to remind them that I existed. I pulled my beat-up sedan into the driveway of the house I grew up in. It was a sprawling colonial in the nice part of Maplebrook, the kind of house with manicured hedges and a front door that cost more than my entire college tuition. My car, with its rusting wheel well and a bumper held on by duct tape and prayer, looked like a stain on the pristine concrete. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment. Gripping the steering wheel, my head was already throbbing, a dull, rhythmic ache behind my eyes that I had been ignoring for months. I took 2 extra strength painkillers, dry swallowing them with a grimace, and told myself to put on my game face. I was the easy child. I was the low-maintenance daughter. I was the one who came home to help, not to need. When I walked inside, the house smelled of expensive vanilla candles and fresh lilies. The dining room table, usually reserved for Thanksgiving and Christmas, had been transformed into a war room. It was covered in fabric swatches, lace samples, and stacks of glossy bridal magazines. My mother, Kara, was standing over a massive mood board, holding a magnifying glass like a general inspecting a map of the battlefield. "Mom," I called out, dropping my backpack by the door. She didn't look up. "Rose? Thank goodness. Come here. Tell me what you think of this shade of ivory. Is it too yellow? Sloan says it looks like old teeth, but the planner says it is vintage chic." I walked over and looked at the scrap of fabric. It looked white, just white. "It looks fine, Mom," I said, trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice. "Fine is not the goal, Rose," she snapped, finally glancing at me. Her eyes swept over my uniform, black slacks and a polo shirt stained with coffee grounds from my shift at the Harbor Light Cafe. She wrinkled her nose slightly. "You look tired. Are you not sleeping?" "I have been pulling double shifts," I said, leaning against the table. "And finals are coming up. Actually, that is what I wanted to talk to you about." "Hold that thought," she interrupted, picking up a pen. "Since you are here, I have a list for you. I need you to drive to the printer in the city and pick up the sample invitations. Then, on Thursday, Aunt Linda is flying in early for the bridal shower, and I need you to handle the airport pickup because I have a tasting with the caterer. Oh, and can you cross-reference the florist's invoice with this spreadsheet? I think they charged us for 2 extra centerpieces." I stared at her. I had driven an hour to get here, running on 4 hours of sleep, hoping for a hot meal or maybe just a conversation that didn't involve logistics. Instead, I had just been hired as an unpaid wedding planner. "Mom," I said, my voice tight, "I have 3 exams next week, and I'm working 25 hours at the cafe. We are all busy." "Rose," she said, waving her hand dismissively, "this is your sister's wedding. It is the event of the year. We all have to pitch in. You know how stressed Sloan is." I took a deep breath. "I know, but I also have graduation. It is in 4 weeks." My mother paused, looking at the spreadsheet. "Right, graduation. That is coming up fast." "I was wondering," I started, feeling that familiar knot of shame in my stomach that only appeared when I had to ask for money. "I need a dress for the ceremony. The gown the school gave me is really thin, and we are supposed to wear formal attire underneath, and there is the Honor Society dinner the night before." I stopped. I waited. I hoped she would say, "Of course. Honey, let's go shopping. Let's get you something beautiful to wear while you give the speech of a lifetime." Instead, she sighed. It was a long, suffering sigh. "Rose, you know how tight things are right now with the wedding budget," she said, gesturing to the mountain of expensive silk on the table. "Sloane's dress alone was $6,000, and the venue just hiked their prices. You are so good at this sort of thing. You are the resourceful one. Can't you find something on sale? Or maybe look at that vintage store you like? You always manage to look decent on a budget." Decent, not beautiful, not proud. Decent. I am the valedictorian. "Mom," I said quietly, "I am giving the speech. I will be on stage in front of 3,000 people." "And we are very proud of you," she said, her eyes already drifting back to the mood board. "But you have always been the independent one. You have a job. You have your scholarship. Sloan needs us right now. She is not as sturdy as you are." Sturdy. That was another word for it. I was the draft horse. Sloan was the show pony. The draft horse didn't get new tackle. The draft horse just pulled the plow until it collapsed. "Okay," I said. "I will figure it out." "That is my girl," she said, not looking up. "Don't forget the printer closes at 5. You should probably head out soon to beat traffic." I turned and walked into the kitchen, needing a glass of water to wash down the bitterness rising in my throat. My father, Brad, was sitting at the island, typing furiously on his laptop. He was wearing noise-canceling headphones. I tapped him on the shoulder. He jumped, then pulled one ear cup back. "Rose," he said, blinking. "When did you get here?" 20 minutes ago, I said. "Hi, Dad." "Hi," he said, glancing at the clock on the microwave. "Everything okay? You need an oil change?" That was the extent of his parenting. Car maintenance and tax forms. "No, the car is fine," I lied. The check engine light had been on for 6 months. "I just wanted to make sure you have the date for graduation locked in. It is May 20th. The ceremony starts at 10 in the morning, but you need to be there by 9 to get seats." He frowned, tapping his calendar app. "May 20th. Right. A Friday?" "A Friday," I corrected him. "Dad, I sent you the invite 2 months ago, and last week, and yesterday." I know," he said, rubbing his temples. "It is just a crazy time at the office, end of quarter, and with the wedding expenses piling up. I am taking on extra consulting work, but I will be there. Put me down as a solid 80%. 80%, I repeated, for my college graduation." "Rose, don't give me that look," he said, defensive now. "You know I want to be there, but if a client calls, I have to pick up. Someone has to pay for this party." He gestured vaguely toward the dining room. "I am on a full academic scholarship. Dad," I reminded him, "you haven't paid a cent for my college." "And thank God for that," he laughed, thinking it was a joke. "You are the low-maintenance kid, a dream come true. Now, let me finish this email." He put the headphone cup back over his ear. Discussion over. I stood there, vibrating with unsaid words. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw his laptop into the sink. I wanted to tell him that being low maintenance wasn't a personality trait. It was a survival mechanism I had developed because they had stopped watering me years ago. The front door slammed open, followed by the click-clack of high heels on the hardwood. "I am home," a voice announced, "and I am devastated." Sloane swept into the kitchen. She was 25, blonde, glowing, and carrying 3 shopping bags from high-end boutiques. She looked like she had just stepped out of a magazine, the kind my mother was currently worshipping. "Rose!" she squealed. Seeing me, she dropped the bags and gave me a side hug that lasted exactly 1 second. "Oh my God, look at you. You look exhausted. Do you need eye cream? I have a sample somewhere." "Hi, Sloane?" I said. "So, disaster," she continued. Turning to Dad, who had dutifully removed his headphones again, "The makeup artist wants to charge extra for airbrushing." "Can you believe the audacity?" I told her. "My skin is flawless. Why am I paying for you to paint a wall that is already painted?" She held out her hand, admiring the 2-carat diamond ring that sat heavy on her finger. "Anyway, Rose, Mom said you are handling the invitations?" she asked, not waiting for an answer. "Make sure you check the cardstock weight. I don't want them to feel flimsy. Flimsy is tacky. I am graduating top of my class. Sloane," I said suddenly. The words just fell out of my mouth. She stopped admiring her ring and looked at me, confused. "I know. Mom told me. Valedictorian or whatever. That is great. Rosie, really, you are so smart. I always said you were the brain, and I was the beauty." She laughed, a tinkling, confident sound. "But seriously, the cardstock, it needs to be at least 100 pounds. Can you handle that?" I looked at her. I looked at my father, who was already typing again. I looked through the doorway at my mother, who was holding a piece of lace up to the light. "I can handle it," I said. "I can handle everything. I always do." "Perfect," Sloane said, patting my cheek. "You are a lifesaver. I am going to go take a nap. Planning is exhausting." She grabbed her bags and headed upstairs. I couldn't breathe in the house anymore. The air felt thin. I grabbed my keys and walked out the back door to the porch. It was starting to rain. A cold, gray Ohio drizzle. I sat on the swinging bench and pulled out my phone. I scrolled past Mom and Dad and Sloane and dialed the only number that mattered. "Yellow?" The voice was gravelly and warm. "Hi, Grandpa," I said. My voice cracked. "Rosie girl," Grandpa Walter said immediately. "You sound like you are standing in the rain. Are you okay?" "I am fine," I said, wiping a rogue tear from my cheek. "I am just at the house. Mom has me running errands for the wedding." "Of course she does," he grunted. "Did she ask if you have eaten today?" "No." "Did your father ask about your speech?" "No." "Idiots," he muttered. "They are raising a prize orchid and treating it like a cactus." I let out a wet laugh. "I think I am a cactus. Grandpa, I am pretty prickly right now." "You are strong, Rose," he said firmly. "But even the strong need to rest. Are you sleeping? Your voice sounds thin." "My head hurts," I admitted. "It has been hurting for weeks. Just stress. I think—" "Listen to me," Grandpa said, his tone shifting. "You focus on that speech. You focus on crossing that stage. That is your moment, not theirs, yours. I will be there. I am sitting in the front row even if I have to fight the dean for the seat." "I know you will," I said. "You are the only one who bought a ticket." "And another thing," he said, lowering his voice as if someone might be listening on his end. "When you graduate, I have something for you, from your Grandma June." "Grandma left me something?" I asked. I thought she left everything to Dad." "That is what your father thinks," Grandpa said darkly. "But June was sharp. She saw things. She saw how they were with Sloane, and she saw how they were with you. She put something aside, a safeguard. It is in a manila envelope, and I am bringing it to the ceremony. It is going to change things for you. Rose, it is going to give you choices." "What kind of choices?" "The kind that let you walk away," he said. "The kind that means you never have to be the resourceful one again unless you want to be." My heart sped up. Grandpa, what is it? Is it money? It is freedom, he said. But we can't talk about it now. Just promise me you will. Rose, my mother's voice shrieked from the kitchen window. Rose, the printer closes in 40 minutes. Stop chatting and get moving. I closed my eyes. The pain in my head spiked. A warning shot. I have to go. Grandpa, I said softly. I know, he said. I love you, kid. Stay standing, eh? Just a few more weeks. I love you too. I hung up. I stood on the porch for a moment, letting the rain dampen my hair. I looked through the window at my family. They were a perfect unit. Mom with her designs, Dad with his work, Sloan with her dreams. They fit together like puzzle pieces, and I was the piece from a different box that they were trying to force into the edge of the frame. They called me independent. They called me self-sufficient. They bragged to their friends about how I never asked for anything, how I had been doing my own laundry since I was 12, how I filled out my own medical forms, how I bought my own car. Rose is so low maintenance, they would say, clinking their wine glasses, standing there in the rain, with a tumor silently growing inside my skull and a list of errands for a wedding I couldn't afford to attend. I finally understood what they meant. They didn't call me independent because they respected my strength. They called me independent so they wouldn't have to feel guilty about their neglect. If I didn't need them, then they didn't have to be there. It wasn't a compliment. It was an alibi. I walked back to my car, the one with the duct-taped bumper, and drove to the printer. I picked up the invitations. I paid for the parking with the crumpled bills from my tip jar, and I didn't say a word, because that is what the easy child does. We swallow the scream until it breaks us. And 4 weeks later, on that stage, I finally broke. The body has a language of its own. It does not speak in words or texts or polite requests. It speaks in throbs, in tremors, and in the sharp, metallic taste of blood. For weeks, my body had been screaming at me, a high-pitched wail of warning that I refused to hear. I told myself it was stress. Of course it was stress. I was a senior taking 18 credits. I was working 25 hours a week at the Harbor Light Cafe. I was trying to maintain a 4.0 grade point average while simultaneously acting as the unpaid logistics coordinator for the wedding of the century. Who wouldn't have a headache? Who wouldn't feel a little dizzy now and then? But it wasn't just a headache. It was a pressure, a physical weight sitting behind my left eye, like a thumb pressing down on a bruise that never healed. It started with the nosebleeds. I was in the library, 3 weeks before graduation, reviewing my notes for the macroeconomics final. 1 minute, I was staring at a supply and demand curve. The next, a bright red drop splashed onto the paper, blooming like a poppy. I touched my lip. My fingers came away wet and crimson. I grabbed a tissue, tilted my head back, and waited for it to stop. It took 10 minutes. I threw the bloody tissue in the trash, packed up my books, and went to my shift at the cafe. Hydrate, I told myself. You are just dehydrated. Drink more water. 2 days later, at the Harbor Light, the floor disappeared. It happened during the lunch rush. The cafe was packed. A cacophony of espresso machines hissing and customers shouting orders over the indie folk music. I was carrying a tray with 4 lattes and a plate of biscotti to table 6. Order for table 6, I called out. I took a step. My vision fractured. It was like looking through a cracked windshield. The edges of the room blurred into a gray static, and the center of my vision tilted violently to the right. My knees buckled. I didn't fall, but I stumbled hard, bracing myself against a structural pillar to stay upright. The tray wobbled dangerously. Hot milk sloshed over the ceramic rims, scalding my hand. Whoa, easy there. A hand grabbed my elbow. It was Miles, the other barista. He relieved me of the tray and set it down on a nearby counter before looking at me. His face was pale under the cafe lights. Rose, are you okay? He asked. You look gray. Like, actually gray. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear the static. The room slowly righted itself, though the throbbing in my head kicked up a notch. I am fine, I said, forcing a smile that felt tight. Just tripped. New shoes, no grip. Miles looked down at my sneakers. They were the same battered Converse I had worn every day for 2 years. He looked back up at me, his brow furrowed. You don't look fine, he said quietly. You look like you are about to pass out. Your hands are shaking. I looked at my hands. They were trembling, a fine, rhythmic vibration I couldn't control. It is just caffeine, I lied. I had 3 espressos before my shift. I am fine. Miles, really. You should go to the campus clinic, Miles insisted. Cover your shift. Go get checked out. You have been holding your head like it is fragile glass all week. I can't, I said, grabbing a rag to wipe the spilled milk off my hand. I need the hours. Rent is due on the 1st, and I have to buy a plane ticket for my aunt next week, because my mom doesn't know how to use the booking website. I don't have time to be sick. I pushed past him and went back to the register. I didn't have time for a clinic. I didn't have time for a copay. I didn't have time for anything that wasn't on my to-do list. That night, Tessa found me sitting on the floor of our dorm room, surrounded by index cards for my valedictorian speech. I was staring at a blank wall, the pen loose in my hand. I hadn't written a word in an hour. The words wouldn't come. Every time I tried to focus, the letters seemed to swim off the page. Tessa dropped a takeout bag from the Thai place down the street onto my desk. The smell of peanut sauce and lime made my stomach turn, even though I hadn't eaten since breakfast. Eat, Tessa commanded. I got you extra tofu. I looked at her. My eyes felt dry and gritty. I am not hungry. Tessa sighed, kicking off her boots and sitting down across from me. She studied my face with the intensity of a scientist examining a specimen under a microscope. You have lost weight, she said bluntly. Your collarbones are sharp enough to cut glass, and you have dark circles under your eyes that look like bruises. Thanks, I muttered. You sure know how to make a girl feel special. I am not trying to be nice. Rose, I am trying to wake you up, Tessa said, her voice rising. You are running yourself into the ground. Miles texted me. He said you almost collapsed at work. Miles is dramatic, I said, rubbing my temples. Miles is observant, she countered. And so am I. You are sick. Rose, you need to see a doctor. I am just tired, I snapped. The anger flared up out of nowhere, hot and irrational. I am tired because I am doing everything. I am finishing my degree. I am working. I am basically planning a wedding for a sister who can't even be bothered to learn my schedule. Then stop, Tessa said. Stop helping them. Tell your mom no. Tell Sloan to hire a planner. Focus on yourself for once. I can't just stop, I said, my voice cracking. They are my family. If I don't help, they won't. I trailed off. They won't what? Tessa asked softly. They won't love you? Rose, look at me. You are setting yourself on fire to keep people warm who don't even look at the flame. They don't see the fire. They just complain that it isn't hot enough. They are coming to graduation, I said, clinging to that one fact like a life raft. Dad promised. Mom is excited. This is big. Tessa, being valedictorian is big. It is the one thing I have done that they actually brag about. Do they brag about you? Tessa asked. Or do they brag about having a valedictorian daughter because it makes them look like good parents? I didn't answer. I couldn't answer. Because deep down, in the dark pit of my stomach, I knew she was right. But I couldn't admit it. Admitting it meant the pain in my head wasn't just physical. It was the manifestation of a lifetime of neglect. And that was too much to handle on a Tuesday night. Just eat the tofu, I said quietly. 2 days later, the phone rang. It was Mom. I answered on the first ring, hoping it was news about their arrival plans. Maybe they were coming a day early. Maybe they wanted to take me to dinner. Rose, I need you to come home this weekend, Mom said without preamble. No hello? No how are you? Mom, I can't, I said, gripping the phone. I have my final thesis presentation on Monday. I have to prep. Don't be silly. You always prep fast, she said breezily. We need to set up the marquee for the engagement party. The rental company is dropping off the chairs, but they won't set them up unless we pay extra. And your father refuses to pay for labor we can do ourselves. And I need someone to check the menu cards against the guest list. Sloan is having a meltdown about the font size. Mom, I am literally dizzy right now, I said, leaning against the wall of the student union. I haven't slept in 2 days. I have 3 exams next week. Sloan needs you, Mom said, her voice hardening. This is her moment, Rose. Why can't you just be supportive? You always make everything so difficult. Something inside me snapped. A small, fragile tether that had held me to them for 22 years. What about what I need? I asked. My voice shook. I am graduating in 2 weeks. I am the top student at the university. I am sick. I am exhausted. Why does Sloan's font size matter more than my health? There was a pause on the line, a silence that felt judgmental. Oh, Rose, Mom sighed. Don't be dramatic. You are young. You have plenty of energy. Stop making this about you. We will expect you on Saturday morning. By 9. She hung up. Don't be dramatic. I stared at the phone. The words echoed in my skull, bouncing around with the headache. Don't be dramatic. I had spent my entire life minimizing myself. I made myself small so I wouldn't take up space. I made myself quiet so I wouldn't be a bother. I made myself useful so they would have a reason to keep me around. And the one time I said I hurt, I was called dramatic. The real breaking point came the night before the engagement party. I was in my dorm room. It was 3 a.m. I woke up screaming. It wasn't a nightmare. It was pain. Pure, white-hot pain that felt like someone had driven a railroad spike through my left temple. I curled into a ball, clutching my head, gasping for air. My vision was swimming with flashes of light, even in the dark room. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. My fingers were numb. I fumbled with the screen, the light searing my eyes. I opened my contacts. Dad. My thumb hovered over his name. I wanted my dad. I was 22 years old, but in that moment, I was 5 years old and scared of the dark. I wanted him to answer. I wanted him to say, I'm coming. Rosie. Hang tight. But I looked at the time. 3:15. If I called him, he would be asleep. He would wake up grumpy. He would ask if it was an emergency. If I said I had a headache, he would sigh. He would tell me to take an aspirin and go back to sleep. He would tell me I was overreacting. He would say, Rose, we have a big day tomorrow. Let us sleep. I couldn't handle the rejection. Not tonight. The pain was too physical. I couldn't add emotional agony on top of it. I scrolled down. Grandpa. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring. His voice was thick with sleep, but alert. Rose, is everything all right? Grandpa, I whimpered. It hurts. My head. It really hurts. Where are you? He asked immediately. The sleep vanished from his tone. Dorm, I gasped. I think I'm dying. You are not dying, he said firmly, though I could hear the fear in his voice. Listen to me. Have you taken anything? I took everything, I cried. Nothing works. It feels like pressure. Too much pressure. Do you want me to call an ambulance? No, I said quickly. No ambulance. It costs too much. Mom will be mad if I make a scene before the party. There was a silence on the other end, a heavy, sad silence. Rose, Grandpa said softly, listen to me. If you do not feel right, you call for help. Screw the money. Screw the party. You are more important than a party. I just wanted to hear your voice, I whispered. The pain was receding slightly, just enough to let me breathe. I didn't want to be alone. I am right here, he said. I am staying on the line. I am not hanging up until you tell me to. He stayed on the phone with me for an hour. He told me stories about when he was in the Navy. He told me about how Grandma June used to make blueberry pancakes that were always raw in the middle. He talked until my breathing slowed and the spike in my head dulled to a throb. "Grandpa?" I said, when the sun began to turn the sky gray outside my window. "Yeah, kiddo?" "I am scared," I admitted. "I feel like something is wrong inside me." "Don't try to be strong." "Rose," he said, "you have been strong your whole life. It is okay to be weak. It is okay to need help." "They won't help me," I said. "Mom and Dad, they won't." "I know," he said. "That is why I'm here." When we finally hung up, I didn't go back to sleep. I sat up in bed, shivering slightly. I opened my laptop and logged into the university student portal. I navigated to the Personal Information tab. Under Emergency Contacts, there were 2 names listed in bold: Brad Wallace, father, and Kara Wallace, mother. They were the default. They were the people the university would call if I got hit by a bus or collapsed in a library. I clicked Edit. I didn't remove them. I couldn't bring myself to do that yet. It felt too final, too aggressive. But I clicked Add New Contact. I typed in Walter Wallace, relationship, grandfather. Then, I saw the checkbox next to the names. Priority order. My finger hovered over the mouse. I thought about the mood board. I thought about the "don't be dramatic" text. I thought about the 3,000 empty seats in my future. I dragged Walter Wallace to the number 2 spot, right below my parents. I couldn't quite put him first. Some conditioned loyalty still held me back. But I put him there, just in case. It was a small administrative change, a few bytes of data on a server somewhere. But as I clicked Save, I felt a strange shiver run down my spine. It wasn't the fever, it was a premonition. I didn't know it then, but I had just signed the paperwork that would save my life. I closed the laptop, stood up, and splashed cold water on my face. The mirror showed a girl with hollow eyes and skin the color of parchment. "Showtime," I whispered to my reflection. I packed my bag for the engagement party. I packed my dress. I packed my pain meds. And I drove home to build a stage for my sister, while my own body was slowly, quietly preparing to bring the curtain down on me. The engagement party was a masterclass in how to spend money on things that do not matter while ignoring the things that do. It was held in our backyard, but calling it a backyard felt like an insult to the landscaping team that had been working since Tuesday. The lawn had been manicured to within an inch of its life. Strings of Edison bulbs crisscrossed overhead, creating a warm, golden canopy that made everyone look rich and tan. A jazz quartet was playing soft, inoffensive covers of pop songs in the corner near the hydrangeas. And then there was the cake. It was a 5-tier tower of vanilla bean sponge and raspberry coulis, wrapped in edible silver leaf and cascading sugar orchids. I knew exactly how much it cost, because I had written the check for my mother to sign. $3,200. That cake cost more than 4 months of my rent. I stood by the drink station, holding a bottle of chilled Prosecco wrapped in a linen napkin. My head was pounding with a rhythm that matched the bass of the double bass player. A dull thud that rattled my teeth. I had taken 3 ibuprofen an hour ago, but they were about as effective as throwing pebbles at a tank. "More bubbles, please," a woman in a silk jumpsuit said, thrusting her empty flute at me without making eye contact. "Certainly," I said, my voice practiced and hollow. I poured. She took the glass and turned away before the liquid even settled. I was not a guest. I was staff. Mom had told me it would be all hands on deck, which apparently meant I was the bartender, the busboy, and the janitor, while Sloane floated through the crowd in a white cocktail dress that cost more than my car. Accepting compliments and flashing her ring, I was wiping condensation off coasters and ensuring the shrimp cocktail didn't sit out too long in the humid Ohio air. "Rose!" I froze. It was Sloane. She was standing in the center of a circle of her friends, girls she had known since high school, who all seemed to have jobs in consulting or brand management without actually doing any work. "Come here," she beckoned, waving her hand with the ring. "I was just telling Madison about you." I set the bottle down and walked over. Wiping my hands on my black slacks, I forced the corners of my mouth up. "Smile," Don't be dramatic. Just smile. Hi, everyone, I said. Sloane draped an arm around my shoulders. She smelled of expensive perfume and champagne. This is my baby sister, Rose, the one I told you about. She is the worker bee of the family. Seriously, she organized this whole thing while finishing college. I would be dead without her. For a second, a tiny, foolish spark of hope lit up in my chest. Maybe she was going to acknowledge it. Maybe she was going to tell them I was valedictorian. She is graduating in a few weeks, Sloane continued, beaming. She is going to be a teacher. Oh, that is sweet, Madison said, tilting her head. Like high school? No, elementary, Sloane corrected. Though I was actually certified for secondary education history, she didn't know the difference. She wants to save the world, one runny nose at a time, a total saint. I told her. Rose, I could never do it. I don't do bodily fluids. But she loves it. She has always been the earthy one. The group laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound, like ice hitting glass. St. Rose of the Mucus, one of the guys joked, raising his glass. I stood there, frozen under Sloane's arm. The headache spiked. A sharp lance of pain behind my left eye. They weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at the idea of me. To them, my ambition to educate was cute. It was quaint. It was something earthy people did while the important people ran the world. Actually, I started, my voice tight, I am graduating as the valedictorian of the entire university, and I plan to go into education policy eventually. The laughter died down for a split second, an awkward pause hanging in the air. Sloane squeezed my shoulder, her nails digging in slightly. See? She is so serious, always the intense one. Anyway, Rose, Madison needs a refill. Be a doll? She dismissed me. Just like that. The prop was no longer useful. I took Madison's glass, filled it, and walked away. I walked until I was in the shadow of the garage, away from the fairy lights. I leaned my forehead against the cool siding of the house and closed my eyes. 2 weeks. I told myself, just 2 more weeks. Then you walk across that stage, you take your diploma, and you never have to pour champagne for these people again. The party wound down around midnight. The caterers packed up, leaving the kitchen in a state of controlled chaos. I was scraping plates into the trash when Mom and Dad walked in, followed by Sloane and her fiancé, Trent. They were high on adrenaline and alcohol. Dad's tie was loose. Mom was flushed. Success, Dad declared, slapping the granite countertop. That was a success. Did you see the look on the Hendersons' faces when they saw the ice sculpture? Priceless. It was perfect, Sloane sighed, leaning into Trent. Everything was perfect. And we have a surprise, Mom said, clapping her hands. She looked at me. Rose, leave the dishes. Come sit. We have news. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and sat on a bar stool. My legs were trembling from standing for 6 hours. What news? Mom pulled an envelope out of her purse. It wasn't a bill. It was a travel itinerary. So, she began, her eyes shining, we were talking with Trent's parents, and they made us the most generous offer. They have a timeshare property that they are not using this month. And since we have all been working so hard on the wedding planning, we decided we all deserve a break. A pre-wedding honeymoon for the whole family. She paused for effect. We are going to Iceland, Sloane squealed. The Blue Lagoon. The Northern Lights. Oh my God. Mom. When? I asked. The single word cut through the noise. I didn't mean to sound sharp, but the dread in my stomach was sudden and cold. That is the best part, Dad said, pouring himself a nightcap. The flight availability was tight, but we snagged a deal. We leave on the 19th, next Friday. The world stopped. The 19th. My graduation was the 20th. I looked at them. They were smiling. They were genuinely oblivious smiling. They were talking about packing winter coats and booking spa treatments. The 19th, I repeated. My voice was very quiet. Of May? Yes, Mom said, looking at the itinerary. We fly out of Columbus at 6 in the evening, overnight flight. We land in Reykjavik in the morning. Mom, I said, my graduation is on the 20th. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Mom blinked. She looked at Dad, then she looked back at me, her expression shifting from excitement to a mild, annoyed confusion. Oh, she said. Right, the ceremony. Yes, I said. The ceremony? The one where I am giving the speech, the one you promised to attend. Well, Dad said, clearing his throat, that is unfortunate timing. Unfortunate timing? I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Dad, it is not timing. It is the date. It has been the date for 4 years. I told you this morning. I told you yesterday. Rose, calm down, Sloane said, rolling her eyes. Don't ruin the vibe. We obviously didn't do it on purpose. We can't change the tickets, Mom said quickly, her defense mechanism kicking in. They are non-refundable. It was a package deal. If we change the dates, we lose the entire credit. It is thousands of dollars. Rose? So you are not coming, I said. It wasn't a question. Honey, Mom said, reaching out to touch my arm. I pulled back. You know how proud we are of you. But it is just a ceremony. It is 3 hours of sitting in a hot gym listening to boring speeches. You are going to get the degree anyway. They mail it to you. I am the valedictorian, I said, my voice shaking. I am giving the speech. I am speaking to 3,000 people. And you will be great, Dad said, pointing a finger at me like he was coaching a sports team. You are a rock. Rose, you don't need us there to hold your hand. You have always been the independent one. You are strong. I don't want to be strong, I whispered. I want my parents to see me graduate. But Sloane needs this, Mom said, her voice turning pleading. Look at her. She is stressed out of her mind with the wedding. She needs a reset. We all do. This trip is important for the family bonding before she gets married. So I am not family, I said. Stop twisting my words, Mom snapped, her patience evaporating. Of course you are family, but you are the capable one. Sloane is sensitive. She needs us right now. You are fine. You are always fine. I am not fine, I said. I am sick. I have a migraine that hasn't gone away in 3 weeks. I am working myself to death. Take an aspirin and get some sleep, Dad said dismissively. You are just tired from the party. We will celebrate with you when we get back. We will bring you a souvenir, maybe one of those wool sweaters. A wool sweater. I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the truth in their eyes. It wasn't that they forgot. It wasn't that they made a mistake. It was that when presented with a choice between a luxury vacation for themselves and the most important day of my life. The choice was easy for them. They chose the lagoon. They chose the champagne. They chose Sloane. Okay, I said. The fight drained out of me. It was replaced by a cold, heavy certainty. Okay? Mom asked, relieved. So you understand? I understand, I said. I understand perfectly. I grabbed my car keys from the counter. Where are you going? Dad asked. It is 1 a.m. I have to go, I said. I have a shift at the cafe in 6 hours. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I closed it quietly, with a soft click that sounded like the closing of a book. I walked down the driveway, past the expensive cars, past the remnants of the party. The air was cold. My breath misted in front of me. I got into my car. It smelled of old coffee and textbooks. I sat there in the dark, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't scream. I didn't hit the dashboard. I just leaned forward, rested my forehead on the steering wheel, and sobbed. It was a guttural, ugly sound. I cried for the little girl who waited by the window for them to come home. I cried for the teenager who learned to sign her own permission slips. I cried for the young woman who had convinced herself that if she was just perfect enough, just smart enough, just successful enough, they would finally look at her with the same adoration they gave her sister. I cried until my chest ached and my head felt like it was going to split open. A tap on the window made me jump. I gasped, wiping my face frantically. I looked up. Standing outside my car was a man I vaguely recognized. He was older, maybe in his 60s, wearing a slightly rumpled suit. He had been at the party, sitting in the back, nursing a scotch all night. I remembered him because he was the only one who had said thank you when I cleared his plate. I rolled down the window 2 inches. "I'm sorry," I choked out. "I'm just leaving." "You are Walter's granddaughter, aren't you?" the man asked. His voice was gravelly but kind. "Yes," I said, sniffing. "I'm Rose." "I'm Arthur," he said. "Arthur Henderson. I used to work with your grandfather at the plant, years ago, and I knew your grandmother June. Fine woman." "Nice to meet you," I said, reaching for the ignition. "I really have to go." "I heard them," Arthur said. He nodded toward the house. The windows were open. I was waiting for my Uber. I heard about the trip. I looked down, shame burning my cheeks. "It is fine. They are busy." Arthur leaned in slightly. His eyes were serious under the street lamp. "It is not fine, kid," he said. "And if Walter knew, he would tear this house down brick by brick." He hesitated, then looked around as if checking to see if anyone was watching. "You tell your grandfather something for me," Arthur said. "You tell him that Arthur saw the paperwork for the remodel loan, the one your father took out last year." "What?" I asked, confused. "What loan?" "Just tell him," Arthur said. "Tell him he should know what they did with your money." "My money?" I frowned. "I don't have any money. I'm broke." Arthur gave me a look that was equal parts pity and anger. "You shouldn't be. Not with what June left behind. You ask him. You ask him about the trust." A car pulled up behind mine. The Uber. "Go get him, kid," Arthur said. He tapped the roof of my car twice, then turned and got into the waiting vehicle. I sat there as his car drove away, the red taillights fading into the darkness. "Your money. What they did with your money." The words bounced around my skull, mixing with the pain of the migraine. I didn't understand. My parents always complained about money. They always said things were tight. That was why I had student loans. That was why I worked. But Arthur's voice had been heavy with a secret. I put the car in reverse. As I backed out of the driveway, I looked up at the house one last time. The kitchen light was still on. I could see their silhouettes moving around, probably opening another bottle of wine to celebrate their upcoming trip. They looked small from here, small and distant. I turned the car toward the main road. The tears had stopped. The sadness was still there. But it was being pushed aside by something new, something colder. I needed to talk to Grandpa, and I needed to survive the next 2 weeks. Because suddenly, I had the feeling that the empty seats at my graduation were going to be the least of my problems. The screen of my phone lit up at 6:30 in the morning. It was the only light in the room. I was already awake. In truth, I had not slept. I had spent the night lying perfectly still, afraid that if I moved my head, the fragile container holding my brain together would finally shatter. The headache was no longer a throb. It was a hum, a constant, high-frequency vibration that seemed to be eroding my optic nerves. I reached out and picked up the phone. My hand was shaking so badly that it took me 2 tries to unlock the screen. A notification from Mom. It was a photo. I tapped it, and there they were. The background was the sleek, gray interior of Keflavik International Airport. They were wearing matching puffy winter coats. Mom in white, Sloan in silver, Dad in navy blue. They looked fresh. They looked well-rested. They were huddled together, beaming at the camera lens. Their faces flushed with the excitement of a vacation that cost more than my entire 4-year education. Below the photo was a text message. "Just landed. A little chilly, but so beautiful already. We are grabbing the rental car and heading to the Blue Lagoon. Have a great day. Sweetie, we are with you in spirit. Send pics." I stared at the image. I stared at the pixels that made up my mother's smile. I felt a wave of nausea so violent that I had to close my eyes and breathe through my nose for a full minute. It wasn't just the physical sickness of the tumor pressing on my brain. It was a spiritual sickness. It was the visceral realization that I could disappear from the face of the earth, and they would just keep smiling, keep traveling, keep posting. I didn't reply. I couldn't. What was I supposed to say? Have fun? I think I'm dying. Please come back. I deleted the notification. It felt like deleting a part of myself. A fist pounded on my door. Rose, open up. If you are not dressed, I am dragging you out in a sheet. It was Tessa. I slid off the bed. The floor felt like it was swaying, like the deck of a ship in a storm. I grabbed the edge of the dresser to steady myself. Coming, I whispered. Though she couldn't hear me, I opened the door. Tessa was standing there in a sundress, holding 2 large coffees and a bag of bagels. She looked radiant, full of the kind of energy that belongs to people who are young and healthy and loved. Her smile dropped the second she saw me. "Oh my God," she said, stepping into the room and kicking the door shut behind her. "Rose, you look—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I had seen myself in the mirror. My skin was the color of old ash. My lips were cracked. The circles under my eyes were so dark they looked like someone had punched me. "I'm fine," I said automatically. The lie tasted like copper in my mouth. "You are not fine," Tessa said, her voice low and dangerous. "You look like a ghost. Sit down." She pushed me onto the bed and tore open the bagel bag. She slathered cream cheese onto a plain bagel and shoved it into my hand. "Eat," she ordered. "You are vibrating. Look at your hands." I looked down. The bagel was dancing in my grip. My fingers were twitching with a rhythm I couldn't control. "I can't eat," I said. "I'll throw up." "Eat half." Tessa negotiated. "You have to walk across a stage in 3 hours. You have to give a speech. You need fuel. Just 3 bites. For me?" I took a bite. It tasted like cardboard. I chewed slowly, forcing my throat to swallow. "Did they call?" Tessa asked, watching me like a hawk. "They texted," I said, swallowing the lump of bread. "They are in Iceland. They are going to the spa." Tessa didn't say anything. She just turned away and started aggressively organizing my graduation gown, smoothing out the wrinkles with violent swipes of her hand. I could tell she was trying not to scream. She was trying not to ruin my morning with her anger, but the air around her was crackling with it. "Okay," she said finally, turning back to me with a forced brightness. "Screw them. We don't need them. We have Grandpa. We have me. We have Miles and the cafe crew. You have a cheering section. Rose, it just looks different than you thought it would." "Yeah," I said softly. "Different." I stood up to put on the gown. As I did, a sharp pain stabbed behind my left ear, so intense that my vision went black for a second. I grabbed the bedpost. "Rose?" Tessa stepped forward. "Shoelace," I lied. "Just tying my shoe." I sat back down. I needed to do one thing. I didn't know why, but a sudden, overwhelming instinct told me I had to do it now. Before I left this room, before I got in the car, I picked up my phone again. I opened the university student portal app. My thumb hovered over the emergency contact section. For 4 years, Brad and Kara Wallace had been the names listed there. They were the people who were supposed to save me. They were the people who were supposed to care. I thought about the photo. I thought about the white coats and the smiles. I clicked edit. I scrolled down to Walter Wallace. I dragged his name up, past Mom, past Dad. I set Walter Wallace as priority 1. Then, I looked at the names Brad and Kara Wallace. I hesitated. I should delete them. I should erase them just like they had erased me from their plans. But some small, pathetic part of me couldn't do it. Not yet. So I left them there. But I demoted them. They were now secondary. They were backups. I clicked save. The screen refreshed. Update successful. It felt like a legal proceeding. I had just fired my parents. "Ready?" Tessa asked gently. I stood up. The gown was heavy. The cap felt like a lead weight on my throbbing head. "Ready," I said. The arena was a cavern of noise. Lakeview State University had rented out the city's hockey stadium for the ceremony. There were thousands of people, graduates in black robes, families in their Sunday best, professors in colorful academic regalia. The air smelled of popcorn, floor wax, and expensive perfume. To me, it sounded like a war zone. Every cheer was a grenade going off in my ear. Every flash of a camera was a blinding flare. I walked with my head down, following Tessa's heels, trying to focus on breathing in and out. One step, another step. Don't vomit, don't fall. We found our seats in the front row reserved for honor students. Tessa sat next to me. She reached under the folds of her gown and gripped my hand. Her palm was warm. Mine was ice cold. "Look," she whispered, nodding toward the stands. "Section 1, row 3? I lifted my head. It took a moment for my eyes to focus, the world swimming in a hazy blur, but then I saw him. Grandpa Walter was there. He had arrived early, just as he promised. He was sitting in the aisle seat, his posture rigid and military straight. He was wearing the old charcoal suit, the one that smelled of mothballs and cedar. He had gotten a haircut. He was holding his hat in one lap and a thick manila envelope in the other. He looked small in the massive stadium. He looked lonely. To his left were 2 empty seats. The visual impact of those empty plastic chairs hit me harder than the headache. They were blue. They were vacant. They were a gap in the universe where my parents should have been. People were squeezing past Grandpa, apologizing as they stepped over his feet to get to their seats. He nodded politely to them, but his eyes were scanning the floor, looking for me. Then he saw me. He raised a hand and gave me a small, shaky wave. He pointed to the envelope on his lap, then patted his chest over his heart. "I am here," the gesture said. "I have the thing." I waved back weakly. "He looks like he is guarding the crown jewels," Tessa whispered, trying to make me laugh. "He is guarding me," I said. The ceremony began. The music started. Pomp and circumstance. The brass instruments blared. The sound drilled into my skull. I flinched physically, squeezing my eyes shut. "Rose?" Tessa squeezed my hand harder. "You are really pale. Do you want water?" "No," I whispered. "If I move, I will break." The speeches began. The president of the university, the guest speaker, some CEO of a tech company who talked about synergy and disruption. I didn't hear a word of it. I was focusing entirely on remaining upright. My body was shutting down. I could feel it. My fingertips were numb. My tongue felt too large for my mouth. The static in my right eye was spreading, encroaching on the left. Just hold on. I begged my own brain. Just 20 minutes. Give the speech. Get the diploma. Then you can collapse. "And now," the dean's voice echoed, "it is my honor to introduce the valedictorian of the class of 2024, Rose Wallace." The applause started. I stood up. My legs belonged to someone else. They moved mechanically, carrying me toward the stairs. I gripped the railing. The metal was cold. I walked up the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. I reached the podium. The lights were waiting for me. They were massive, burning eyes staring down from the rafters. They seared through my retinas. The heat was instantaneous. I felt sweat prickle on my forehead. I placed my index cards on the wood. I looked down at them. The words were moving. They were sliding off the page like ink in water. "Focus," I commanded. "Read the first line." I looked out at the crowd. 3,000 faces, a sea of strangers, and one old man in a gray suit. I couldn't see my parents. I couldn't see the empty seats anymore. The distance was too great, and my vision was failing. But I knew they were empty. I could feel their emptiness radiating like a cold star. I leaned into the microphone. "Good morning," I said. My voice was steady. It was a miracle. "Faculty, friends, families." I paused. "We are told that graduation is a beginning," I read, reciting the words I had memorized weeks ago. "We are told it is the start of our real lives. But for many of us, The real life started long ago. It started when we worked that second job. It started when we studied until sunrise. The headache surged. A wave of dizziness washed over me. So strong I had to grip the sides of the podium to keep from sliding down. The audience swayed like a field of wheat in the wind. I skipped a paragraph. I couldn't read the cards anymore. I had to speak from the heart, or what was left of it. We are often defined by who shows up for us, I said. I looked directly at where I knew Grandpa was sitting. We are told that success is a crowded room. My breath hitched. The pressure in my head was building to a crescendo. It felt like a dam about to burst. But I have learned, I continued, my voice gaining a strange, resonant power, that the most important people are not the ones who fill the seats when it is easy. They are the ones who sit in the silence when it is hard. I took a breath. It was a shallow, ragged thing. I stand here today, I said, and I knew this was the last sentence I would ever speak on this stage. Not because of the people who left. I stand here because of the people who stayed. I said the word stayed, and then the dam broke. It wasn't a metaphor, it was a physical sensation, a pop, followed by a rush of heat inside my skull. The world didn't fade to black, it tilted. The entire stadium rotated 90 degrees to the left. The floor rushed up to meet my face. I didn't feel the impact of my shoulder hitting the wood. I didn't feel the microphone stand clattering down beside me. I heard the sound first, a collective gasp from 3,000 throats, a sound of pure, unadulterated horror. Then, a scream. "Rose!" It was Tessa. She sounded far away, like she was screaming from the other side of a canyon. "Get a medic! She's down!" I was lying on my side. My cheek was pressed against the smooth, varnished floorboards of the stage. One of my eyes was open. I could see a pair of shoes running toward me. "Rose! Rose! Can you hear me?" The darkness was closing in now. It was rushing in from the periphery, a black tide swallowing the light, but before the tide took me, I heard one last thing. "I am here." It was Grandpa's voice. He was shouting. He was fighting his way past security. He was coming. "I am here, Rosie. I am here." He came, I thought, as the darkness washed over me completely. He stayed, and then there was nothing. No pain, no speech, no empty seats, just the silence I had been waiting for. The first thing I noticed was the color white. It was not the warm, creamy white of the expensive cardstock my mother had chosen for the wedding invitations. It was a cold, sterile, aggressive white. It was the color of a place where life is measured in beeps and fluid ounces. I tried to blink, but my eyelids felt like they had been glued shut with sandpaper. I forced them open, and the white ceiling tiles came into focus. They were patterned with tiny, irregular dots. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4. I was alive. The realization did not bring a wave of relief. It brought a wave of pain. My head felt like it had been split open. The contents rearranged, and then stitched back together by someone wearing boxing gloves. My throat was so dry it felt like I had swallowed a handful of desert sand. I tried to speak. I wanted to say water, but all that came out was a dry, cracking croak. "Hush now." The voice was familiar. It was the sound of safety. I turned my head to the left. The movement sent a fresh spike of agony down my neck. But I gritted my teeth and pushed through it. Grandpa Walter was there. He was sitting in a plastic hospital chair that looked far too small for him. He was asleep, his chin resting on his chest, his breathing rattling slightly in his throat. He was still wearing the charcoal suit from graduation. The tie was loosened, hanging askew around his neck like a noose. His shirt was rumpled, stained with coffee spills and what looked like sweat. His gray stubble had grown into a rough beard over the last few days. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the span of a single nap. To my right, there was a folding chair. Tessa Reed was curled up on it, her knees pulled to her chest, her head resting on her arms. Her mascara had run down her cheeks in black rivers, drying into crusty streaks. She looked like a broken doll. I reached out a hand. My fingers were attached to tubes and wires. The plastic clip on my finger emitted a red glow. "Tessa," I whispered. It was barely a sound, but in the silence of the room, it was enough. Tessa's head snapped up. Her eyes were bloodshot, swollen, and terrified. She blinked, staring at me as if I were a hallucination. "Rose?" she breathed. She scrambled off the chair, knocking it over with a loud clang. Grandpa jumped awake, his eyes wide and panicked. "I am here," Grandpa shouted, his voice cracking. "I am here." "She is awake," Tessa sobbed. She threw herself at the side of the bed, grabbing my hand but hovering over me, afraid to touch anywhere else. "Oh my God, you are awake. You are actually awake." "Water," I rasped again. Grandpa was on his feet instantly. He grabbed a plastic cup with a bendy straw from the bedside table and held it to my lips. His hands were shaking so hard that he spilled a little on my chin, but I didn't care. I drank. The water was lukewarm, but it felt like holy water washing away the dust of the grave. "Slowly, Rosie," Grandpa said, his voice thick with emotion. Slowly. I drank until the cup was empty. I let my head fall back against the pillow. "How long?" I asked. 3 days, Tessa said. She was wiping her face with the back of her hand, sniffling loudly. "You have been in a coma for 3 days, 72 hours. Do you have any idea how scared I was? I thought you were gone. I was ready to kill you myself for leaving me." She was laughing and crying at the same time, a hysterical, jagged sound. "The doctor?" I asked. "He just left an hour ago," Grandpa said. He sat down on the edge of the bed, taking my hand in his calloused grip. "Doctor, Aris, he said you are going to be fine. It was a cavernous angioma, a cluster of blood vessels. It burst during the speech. But they got it. They got all of it. He said it was benign. Benign, harmless." "It didn't feel benign," I whispered. "No," Grandpa said grimly. "It wasn't. But you are strong. You are the strongest Wallace there is." I lay there, processing the information. Brain surgery. 3 days. I had missed the rest of the ceremony. I had missed the diploma handoff. I had missed the tossing of the caps. "Did I finish?" I asked suddenly. "The speech?" Tessa let out a wet, choked laugh. "Rose, you literally died on stage. And you are worried about your speech?" "Yes." "You finished the sentence. You said, 'I stand here because of the people who stayed.' And then you dropped like a stone. It was the most dramatic mic drop in the history of the university." I closed my eyes. The people who stayed. My parents. The memory of the empty seats came rushing back, hitting me harder than the surgical pain. "My phone," I said. Tessa froze. She looked at Grandpa. Grandpa looked at the floor. "Rose, you need to rest," Tessa said quickly. "The light is bad for your eyes. Doctor, Aris said no screens." "Give me my phone." "Tessa," I said. My voice was weak, but it had an edge of steel that surprised even me. Tessa hesitated. She looked like she wanted to throw the device out the window, but she knew me. She knew I wouldn't stop asking. Slowly, she reached into her purse and pulled out my cracked iPhone. She handed it to me as if it were a loaded gun. "Just don't," she whispered. I unlocked it. The screen was bright. I squinted, adjusting the brightness down. I had hundreds of notifications, text messages from classmates, missed calls from Miles, emails from professors. I ignored them all. My thumb went automatically to the social media folder. Instagram. I didn't have to search. It was the first thing on my feed. The algorithm knew who I interacted with most. It knew who I stalked for validation. It was a post from Sloan. Posted 2 hours ago. The photo was high definition, filtered to perfection. It showed a landscape of unearthly beauty. Steam rose from milky blue water, contrasting against jagged black lava rocks. The sky was a pale, Arctic blue. In the center of the frame, My family floated. Dad was holding a plastic cup of beer, wearing sunglasses. Mom had a white silica mud mask smeared on her face, making her look like a happy ghost. Sloane was in the middle, showing off her left hand, the diamond ring glistening wet and bright. They were laughing, not just smiling for the camera, but laughing, head thrown back, open-mouthed, genuine laughter. I read the caption, finally checking off the bucket list. The Blue Lagoon is literal heaven on earth. So nice to finally just breathe and disconnect from the real world. No drama, no deadlines, just us and the steam. Finally getting the rest we deserve. Family vacation, Iceland, stress-free. Sloane, getting hitched, peaceful. I read it again. No drama, no deadlines. Finally getting the rest we deserve. I lay in a hospital bed with a shaved patch on my head, staples holding my skull together, and a catheter bag hooked to the side of the rail. I had fought for my life for 72 hours, and they were celebrating a life with no drama. I was the drama. My graduation was the drama. My existence was the deadline they were escaping. There was no mention of me. No pray for Rose, no sad we are missing graduation, no hope our daughter is okay. They had erased me. They had stepped onto that plane. And in doing so, they had decided that Rose Wallace ceased to exist until it was convenient for her to exist again. I stared at the photo until the blue water seemed to turn red. They don't know, I whispered. It was a statement of hope, the last desperate defense of a child who wanted to be loved. They don't know I collapsed. They are in Iceland. Maybe they don't have signal. Tessa made a sound in her throat. It was a growl. They have signal. Rose, she said, her voice trembling with rage. They posted that photo 2 hours ago. They have been posting stories all day. They have Wi-Fi. But maybe they didn't get the calls, I insisted, though the ice was already spreading through my chest. International roaming. We called them, Tessa said. She stood up, unable to sit still anymore. She paced the small room. I called your mom 5 times. I called your dad 6 times. I called Sloane. I left voicemails. I texted. I sent a message on Facebook Messenger. I saw the read receipt. Rose. Sloane read my message saying you were in the ICU. I looked at Grandpa. He was sitting very still, staring at his hands. Grandpa? I asked. He looked up. His eyes were hard. I called your father, he said. Yesterday, I used the hospital phone so it would show up as an emergency number. And? He picked up, Grandpa said. He answered. I heard wind in the background. I said, Brad, listen to me. Rose is in surgery. And you know what he said? I held my breath. He said, Dad, we are boarding a helicopter tour right now. The connection is bad. I can't deal with your guilt trips today. We will talk next week. And he hung up. I can't deal with your guilt trips. My brain surgery was a guilt trip. My near-death experience was an inconvenience to his helicopter tour. I looked back at the phone. The photo of them laughing. I waited for the tears. I waited for the sobbing, the hyperventilating, the breakdown that I had felt in the car 4 weeks ago. I waited for the heartbreak, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange, cold sensation in the center of my chest. It felt like liquid nitrogen being poured over my heart. It froze everything. The pain, the longing, the need for approval. It all crystallized into something hard and sharp. I didn't cry. I didn't frown. My face went completely slack. Okay, I said. Tessa stopped pacing. She looked at me, worried. Rose? Scream. Please. Yell. Throw the phone. Do something. Why? I asked calmly. They are happy. Look at them. They are having the time of their lives. Because they are monsters, Tessa shouted. They abandoned you. They didn't abandon me, I corrected her, my voice devoid of emotion. To abandon something, you have to claim it first. They never claimed me. I was just staff. I was the employee who kept the house running, and now I'm out of office, so they are on break. Just then, the door opened. A nurse bustled in. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a tired smile. She was holding a clipboard. "Oh, good. You are awake," she said, checking the monitors. "Doctor, Aris will be pleased. BP is stabilizing. How is the pain, honey?" "Manageable," I said. "That is a brave face," she said, adjusting my IV drip. "We were getting a little worried about the administrative side of things. We tried to get a hold of your parents again this morning." I looked at her. "You did?" "Yes," she said, not looking up from her chart. "Someone finally called the main desk about 4 hours ago. A woman, probably your mother. She didn't leave a name." My heart gave a single, painful thud. "What did she ask? Did she ask if I was awake?" The nurse paused. She looked a little uncomfortable. She glanced at Grandpa, then back at me. "Well, not exactly," she said. "She asked about the insurance forms. She wanted to know if the hospital accepts out-of-network coverage. And, well, she asked who the authorized signatory was for the procedure. She seemed very concerned about whether she had accidentally authorized anything that would, how did she put it, impact their credit rating." The silence in the room was absolute. The nurse sensed she had said too much. "But I am sure she was just panicked. People say strange things when they are in shock. Anyway, I will let you rest." She hurried out of the room, closing the door softly. Impact their credit rating. That was their concern. Not my brain, not my life, but whether my surgery would show up on their credit report. I looked at the ceiling again. I counted the dots. 1, 2, 3, 4. I felt Grandpa's hand tighten on mine. "I am sorry, Rose," he whispered. "I am so sorry you have them as parents." I turned my head to look at him. "It is not your fault, Grandpa." My eyes drifted to the side of the bed, where Grandpa had placed his hat. Underneath the hat was the manila envelope, the one he had held on his lap during the graduation, the one with the string closure. "Grandpa," I said. "The envelope." He followed my gaze. "What is in it?" I asked. "You said Grandma June left it. You said it was a safeguard." Grandpa reached over and picked up the envelope. He held it in his hands, weighing it. It looked heavy, thick. "It is," he said. "It is everything she knew you would need." "Is it money?" "It is leverage," Grandpa said. "And it is the truth." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something dangerous in his gentle eyes. It was the look of a man who had been polite for too long and was finally ready to start a war. "Can I open it?" I asked. "Not yet," he said gently. "You are too weak, and your eyes need to rest, but you need to know one thing." "What?" "They are in Iceland now," Grandpa said. "They are laughing. They think they got away with it. They think they can come back in a week, bring you a sweater, and apologize for the misunderstanding. But they don't know about this envelope." He tapped the paper surface. "When they find out what is in here," Grandpa said, "they aren't going to finish their vacation. They are going to fly back so fast they will break the sound barrier. Not because they love you, but because they are terrified of what you now own." I looked at the envelope, then I looked at the phone in my hand, at the photo of my smiling, unbothered family. "Good," I said. I handed the phone back to Tessa. "Tessa," I said, "can you take a picture?" "Of what?" she asked, surprised. "Of me," I said. "Right now, with the tubes, with the bandage, with the bruises." "Rose, why?" "I want to save it," I said. "I want to look at it every day. I want to remember exactly what I looked like when I stopped being their daughter." Tessa nodded slowly. She raised her phone. I didn't smile. I looked straight into the lens, my face a mask of cold, white marble. Click, the flash went off. "Let them stay in the Blue Lagoon," I whispered to the empty room. "Because when they get back, I am going to drown them." The silence of the hospital room was shattered not by a doctor's pager or a monitor alarm, but by my phone. It started as a single buzz against the plastic of the bedside table, then another, within seconds. The device was vibrating so violently it sounded like an angry hornet trapped in a jar. The screen lit up the dim room, flashing repeatedly. A strobe light of urgency. Tessa, who had been dozing in the chair, jerked awake. She reached out to silence it, but stopped when she saw the names dancing across the glass. "It is them," she whispered, looking at me with wide eyes. "It is all of them." I reached over, fighting the stiffness in my arm, and picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. 17 missed calls, 8 from Mom, 5 from Dad, 4 from Sloan, and the text messages were rolling in like a ticker tape of panic. Mom. Rose. Pick up the phone. Now, Dad. Urgent family matter. Call us immediately. Sloan. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? We need to talk to you right now. Mom. Rose. This is not the time to be difficult. Answer your father. I scrolled through the wall of gray bubbles. I read every single word. I looked for the question that any normal human being would ask after their daughter or sister had collapsed in front of 3,000 people. I looked for, "Are you okay?" I looked for, "Did you survive surgery?" I looked for, "We love you." It was not there. There was no concern. There was only a demand. Need. Call. Now. They don't know, I said, my voice flat. They still don't know I am in the hospital. If they knew, they would be pretending to care. This isn't the panic of grieving parents. This is the panic of people who have lost their wallet. I dropped the phone back onto the table. It buzzed again. I ignored it. Why? Tessa asked, staring at the screen as if it were cursed. Why are they blowing up your phone now? 2 hours ago they were in the Blue Lagoon without a care in the world. I turned my head slowly to look at Grandpa Walter. He had not moved when the phone started ringing. He sat in the chair, his hands clasped over the manila envelope, his face carved from stone. He wasn't looking at the phone. He was looking at me, and his expression was a terrifying mix of sorrow and vindication. "Grandpa," I said, "why are they calling?" He took a deep breath. It sounded like a rattle in his old chest. "Because the notification just hit your father's email," Grandpa said. "What notification?" "The notification that the June Wallace Education Trust has been transferred," he replied, "and that he is no longer the executor." The room went very quiet. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic beep of my heart monitor. "The what?" I asked. Grandpa unclasped his hands and began to unwind the string closure of the envelope. His fingers were stiff, but deliberate. He pulled out a stack of documents. They smelled old, paper that had been sitting in a safe deposit box for years. "Your grandmother June," he began, his voice low, "loved your father, but she was not blind. She saw things that I tried to ignore. She saw how Brad spent money he didn't earn. She saw how Kara needed to buy things to feel like she existed, and she saw you." He pulled out a document with a blue cover and handed it to me. "When you were 12 years old, June set up a trust," Grandpa explained. "She put $50,000 into it. It was money she inherited from her own father. She invested it in a high-yield index fund. Compound interest, Rose. It is a powerful thing." I looked at the number on the page. It wasn't $50,000 anymore. After 10 years of aggressive growth and reinvested dividends, the number at the bottom of the page was substantial. It was enough to pay off my student loans. It was enough to put a down payment on a house. "She knew," Grandpa continued. "She knew that if Brad or Kara knew this money existed, they would find a reason to spend it. A renovation, a car, a wedding." He spat the word wedding like it was poison. "So she made it a blind trust," he said. "It was hidden. Brad knew June left some money, but he thought it was locked up until you turned 30. He thought he had time to work on me, to convince me to release it to him for management, but June put a trigger clause in the contract." "What clause?" I asked, my fingers tracing the signature at the bottom. "June Elizabeth Wallace." "Graduation," Grandpa said. "Upon the graduation of Rose Wallace from an accredited university with a bachelor's degree, the full control of the trust transfers immediately and irrevocably to the beneficiary. No waiting period, no parental oversight, The bank sent the official notice of transfer to the family lawyer this morning, which means your father just got an email telling him that $250,000 just slipped out of his reach and landed in yours." I stared at the paper. $250,000. I thought about the shifts at the Harbor Light Cafe. I thought about the days I ate instant noodles because I couldn't afford fresh vegetables. I thought about the duct tape on my car bumper. "They aren't calling because they are worried," Grandpa said, confirming the cold dread in my stomach. "They are calling because they want you to sign it over to them before you figure out what you have." "They want the money," I whispered. "They need the money," Grandpa corrected. "But that is not the worst of it. Rose," I looked up. "What could be worse than my parents trying to steal my inheritance while I am in a coma?" Grandpa reached into the envelope again. This time, his hand shook. He pulled out 2 thinner pieces of paper. They looked like bank transfer receipts. "When you started college," Grandpa said, looking down at his knees, "I wanted to help. I didn't have much. My pension is small, but I had some savings, bonds I had bought in the 80s. He took a breath. Steeling himself. "I cashed them out," he said. $100,000. I gave $50,000 to your father for Sloane's tuition, and I gave $50,000 to your father for your tuition." The air left the room. "What?" I choked out. "I gave him the check," Grandpa said, his voice trembling with shame. 4 years ago, August 2022, I sat at his kitchen table. I handed him the check and I said, "Brad, this is for Rose. Make sure she doesn't have to work too hard. Make sure she can focus on her studies." I felt the blood drain from my face. "I never got it," I said. "Grandpa, I never saw a dime. I took out federal loans. I took out private loans. I worked 25 hours a week. Dad told me. He told me money was tight. He told me I had to learn the value of $1. "I know," Grandpa whispered. Tears were standing in his eyes. "I didn't know. Rose, I thought you were working because you wanted the extra pocket money. I thought you were saving up for something special." Every time I asked Brad, he said, "Oh, Rose is fine. The tuition is paid. She is just building her resume." "He stole it," Tessa said from the corner. Her voice was pure ice. "He took the money for your school and he kept it." "He didn't just keep it," Grandpa said. "Look at the dates." He handed me the receipts. The date on the transfer to Brad's account was August 15th, 2022. 2 weeks later, on September 1st, 2022, there was a Facebook post printed out and stapled to the back of the receipt. It was a picture of my father standing next to a brand new boat, a sleek, white speedboat sitting in the driveway. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to treat yourself. Hard work pays off. New Toy Lake Life." I looked at the boat, then I looked at the receipt. He had bought a boat with my tuition. He had watched me come home exhausted, smelling of stale coffee, with burn marks on my hands from the espresso machine. He had watched me stress over textbook prices. He had lectured me about financial responsibility, and he had done it while driving a boat paid for by my grandfather's life savings. "I am going to kill him," Tessa said. She stood up, her fists clenched. "I am going to fly to Iceland, and I'm going to push him into a volcano." "Sit down, Tessa," Grandpa said. "There is more." "More?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. I felt like I was being punched in the stomach, over and over again. "This is the part that makes me want to burn the house down," Grandpa said. He pulled out the last document. It was a legal-sized paper. It looked official. It had stamps and seals on it. "You met Arthur Henderson?" Grandpa asked. "Outside your house? The night of the party?" "Yes," I nodded. "He told me to ask you about my money. Arthur works at the county clerk's office," Grandpa said. "He processes property liens and mortgages. He saw a filing come across his desk 6 months ago. It looks standard. A home equity line of credit, a loan against the house to pay for renovations, the garden, the kitchen, the wedding deposits." Grandpa laid the paper on the bedspread. "Look at the applicants," he said. I looked. Applicant 1, Bradley Wallace. Applicant 2, Kara Wallace. Cosigner/guarantor, Rose Wallace. I stared at my name. I didn't sign this, I said. I never signed this. I don't even own the house. They used your credit, Grandpa said. Brad and Kara have terrible credit. They are maxed out on everything. The bank wouldn't give them a loan, but you? You have perfect credit. You have student loans you pay on time. You have a steady income. You are a low risk. But I didn't sign it, I repeated. How is my name on there? Look at the signature. Grandpa pointed to the bottom of the page. It was my signature, or at least, a very good copy of it. It looked exactly like the way I signed my checks. Who witnessed it? I asked. There is a notary stamp, Grandpa said. A friend of your mother's, someone who probably didn't ask too many questions when Kara brought in the papers and said, "Oh, Rose signed this at home. She is so busy with school." I looked at the date next to the signature, October 12th, 2025. I was in Chicago, I said. On October 12th, I was at the Model UN conference. I have the plane tickets to prove it. I wasn't even in the state. The realization hit me so hard I actually gasped. It wasn't just negligence. It wasn't just selfishness. It was a felony. They had forged my signature. They had stolen my identity. They had taken out a loan in my name, a loan for $150,000, to pay for a wedding I was working as a servant at. If they default on this loan, Grandpa said quietly, the bank doesn't just come for the house. They come for you. They come for your future wages. They destroy your credit score. You would be 22 years old and bankrupt. I closed my eyes. I felt the tears finally coming. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated shock. I had spent my entire life trying to be the good daughter. I had tried to be easy. I had tried to be low maintenance. I thought that if I cost them nothing, they might love me. But I didn't cost them nothing. I was their piggy bank. I was their safety net. They didn't love me. They consumed me. That is why they are panicking, Grandpa said. Arthur told me he was going to flag the file. He told me he was going to wait until you graduated to tell you, so you wouldn't drop out from the stress. But now they know that I have the trust money, I said, putting the pieces together. And they know that Arthur is your friend, and they know that if I look at my credit report, which I would do if I suddenly had money to manage, I would see the loan. They are not coming back because they miss you. Rose, Grandpa said, his voice heavy with the truth he had carried for days. They are coming back because they are terrified. They are terrified that you are going to wake up, see what they did, and send them to prison. The phone buzzed again. Another text from Mom. Mom, Rose, we are changing our flights. We are coming home. We need to meet. Do not sign anything until we get there. Do not talk to Grandpa. He is confused. We love you. Call us. He is confused. I looked at the man sitting next to me. The man who had sat in a plastic chair for 3 days. The man who had given up his life savings for my education, only to have it stolen by his own son. He is not confused, I said to the room. I reached for the phone. Rose, what are you doing? Tessa asked. Alarmed, I didn't answer. I opened the text thread with my mother. I didn't type a paragraph. I didn't scream. I didn't ask why. I typed 5 words. I saw the loan documents. Then I hit send. I watched the screen. The read receipt appeared instantly. They were staring at their phones. Then, the typing bubbles appeared. They danced for a second. Then they disappeared. Then they appeared again. Then stopped. They didn't reply. There was nothing to say. The silence on the other end of the line was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a trap snapping shut. I looked at Grandpa. I want a lawyer, I said. Grandpa nodded, a slow, grim smile spreading across his tired face. I thought you might say that, he said. Arthur has a nephew. He is a pit bull in a suit. He is meeting us tomorrow. Not here, I said. I don't want to see them here. I don't want them in my hospital room. Where then? You said you would take me somewhere, I said, remembering his words from before the surgery. To finish this? I did, Grandpa said. Take me there, I said. As soon as I can stand up, take me there, and let's end it. I looked down at the forged signature one last time. It looked so much like mine. It was a perfect copy of the person they wanted me to be. Compliant, silent, and useful. But that person had died on the stage at Lakeview State University. The person in the hospital bed was someone else entirely, and she was about to become their worst nightmare. The door to my hospital room did not open. It burst inward. It had been 24 hours since I sent the text message about the loan. 24 hours of silence from the other side of the Atlantic. Followed by the frantic coordination of emergency flights, I was sitting up in bed, propped against 3 pillows. The headache was still there. A constant, dull companion, but the dizziness had faded into a sharp, hyper-aware clarity. I watched the door handle turn. I watched the wood swing back against the stopper with a violent thud. And then, the performance began. My mother, Kara, was the first one through the door. She was wearing a cashmere travel set in beige, looking disheveled in a way that was carefully curated to suggest distress. Her hair was messy, but artfully so. She dropped her designer carry-on bag in the middle of the floor and rushed toward me with her arms outstretched. "Rose!" she wailed. It was a sound I had heard before, when she chipped a nail before a gala, when a waiter messed up her order. It was the sound of performance. "Oh, my baby, my poor baby." She threw herself onto the bed. The smell of duty-free perfume and stale airplane air hit me like a physical blow. She wrapped her arms around my shoulders, pressing my face into her chest. "We were so worried," she sobbed into my hair. "We came as soon as we could. Oh, look at you. You are so pale." I did not hug her back. My arms lay flat at my sides, heavy and unresponsive. I sat there like a statue, letting her perform her grief on top of me. My father, Brad, followed her in. He looked tired, genuinely tired, perhaps for the first time in years, but his eyes were darting around the room, scanning the corners, checking the bedside table. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking for paperwork. "Thank God," he breathed, rubbing his face with both hands. "Thank God you are awake. It has been a nightmare. Rose, an absolute nightmare for us." And then, Sloane. My sister walked in last. She was wearing sunglasses, even though it was indoors. She pushed them up onto her head as she entered. In her left hand, she was clutching a bright yellow plastic bag from the airport duty-free shop. "God, this place smells like bleach," Sloane said, wrinkling her nose. She looked at me, then at the bandage on my head. She winced, not with sympathy, but with discomfort. "You look rough, Rose. I had brain surgery." "Sloane," I said. My voice cut through Mom's sobbing. It was quiet, steady, and devoid of warmth. Mom pulled back, holding me at arm's length. She looked into my eyes, searching for the usual softness, the usual compliance. She didn't find it. "I know, sweetie, I know," Mom said, wiping a tear that might have been real, though I doubted it. "It is terrible, but we are here now. The family is here. Everything is going to be fine." "Is it?" I asked. "Of course it is," Dad said. Stepping closer to the bed, he put a hand on my ankle, squeezing it through the blanket. "We are going to get you the best care. We are going to handle everything. You don't have to worry about a single thing." "I am not worried," I said. "I am just confused." "Confused about what?" Mom asked, stroking my cheek. I flinched away from her touch. Her hand froze in midair. "I am confused about the timeline," I said. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. "I collapsed on Saturday morning. I had emergency surgery 3 hours later. I was in a coma for 3 days." I looked at Sloane. "And yesterday," I continued, "while I was learning how to walk to the bathroom again, you were posting photos of the northern lights. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sloane shifted her weight, the plastic bag crinkling loudly. Rose, don't start. We didn't know it was that serious. The hospital was vague. The hospital told you I had a craniotomy, I said. That means they cut open my skull. Is that vague to you? We were in Iceland, Mom cried, her voice rising to that pitch she used when she wanted to play the victim. We were thousands of miles away. The flights were fully booked. We had to pay a fortune to get these tickets last minute. Do you have any idea how much it cost to get back here? I don't care, I said. The 3 words hung in the air. Excuse me? Dad frowned, his brow furrowing. Rose, that is ungrateful. We dropped everything. We cut the trip short. You didn't cut the trip short because I was sick, I said. You cut the trip short because I texted you that I saw the loan documents. Dad's face went gray. He pulled his hand away from my ankle as if he had been burned. We can talk about that later, Dad stammered, glancing at Tessa, who was standing in the corner with her arms crossed, watching them with the intensity of a bodyguard. This is a family matter. We should discuss this privately. He looked at Tessa. Tessa, honey, thank you for staying with her. You have been a great friend, but we need some time with our daughter. You can go home now. Tessa didn't move. She didn't even blink. Tessa stays, I said. Rose? Mom sighed, using her mother knows best tone. We have family business to discuss. Tessa doesn't need to be bored with this. Tessa is family, I said. She was here when I woke up. She held the bucket when I threw up from the anesthesia. She slept on that chair for 3 nights. I looked at the empty chairs where my parents had just been standing. You were in a lagoon, I said. Tessa stays. If she leaves, I stop talking. Sloane let out a loud huff. Fine. Whatever. Can we just get this over with? I am jet-lagged and I need a shower. Get what over with? A deep voice asked from the doorway. My parents spun around. Grandpa Walter stepped into the room. He wasn't wearing the rumpled suit anymore. He had gone home, showered, and changed into a clean flannel shirt and dark trousers. He looked refreshed. He looked dangerous. Dad, my father said, his voice tight. I didn't know you were here. Obviously, Grandpa said. He walked past my father without looking at him and came to stand by the head of my bed, placing himself between me and them. If you had called the hospital to check on your daughter instead of checking on your insurance liability, you would have known I have been here every single minute. We appreciate you stepping in, Mom said, flashing a tight, nervous smile. Really, Walter, it was so helpful, but we are here now, so you can go home and rest. We can take it from here. Take what from here? Grandpa asked. The credit card fraud? Or the neglect? Dad, my father snapped, watch your mouth in front of the girls. I am watching it, Grandpa said calmly. I am watching it very closely, just like I'm watching you. Grandpa turned to face my father fully. The height difference wasn't much, but Grandpa seemed to tower over him. Brad, Grandpa said conversational, as if asking about the weather. Quick question. What is Rose's birthday? My father blinked. What? Her birthday, Grandpa repeated. Month, day, and year. This is ridiculous, Dad scoffed. I know my own daughter's birthday. Then say it. Dad shifted his feet. He looked at Mom. Mom looked away, biting her lip. It is in June, Dad said. June 14th, 1998? I closed my eyes. May 20th, I whispered. 2004. I was born on the day you graduated from law school. Dad, you used to tell everyone I was your good luck charm. I guess luck runs out. Dad turned red. I am under a lot of stress. Rose, put yourself in my shoes. I am trying, I said, but my shoes are usually at work, and yours are usually on a boat. Okay, stop it, Sloane shouted. She dropped the yellow bag on the floor. This is insane. Why is everyone attacking us? We rushed back. We are here. Rose is fine. She is talking. She is awake. Why does everything have to be so dramatic with you? Rose, you always have to make yourself the victim. The victim? Tessa stepped forward, her voice shaking with rage. She had a tumor. Sloan. She didn't trip and scrape her knee. She had a piece of her brain cut out. And she is fine now, Sloan yelled back. Look at her. She is sitting up. She is being snarky. So can we please stop pretending like this is a tragedy and focus on the fact that my wedding is in 2 months and this negative energy is ruining everything? Sloan, I said. She looked at me, her eyes flashing with entitlement. I am not being dramatic, I said softly. I almost died. If Grandpa hadn't signed the papers, I would have died. And while I was dying, you were worried about your tan lines. We didn't know, she screamed. You didn't ask, I countered. Grandpa raised a hand, silencing the room. Enough, he said. We are not here to argue about feelings. We are here to talk about facts. He reached into the bedside drawer and pulled out the manila envelope. At the sight of the envelope, my mother actually took a step back. My father went rigid. You know what this is, don't you, Brad? Grandpa asked. Dad, please, my father said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Not here. Not in front of Rose. Rose has read every page, Grandpa said. My parents looked at me with horror. It wasn't the horror of parents realizing their child knew a dark secret. It was the horror of criminals realizing the witness had spoken to the police. Rose, Mom started, her voice trembling. Honey, you have to understand. We didn't mean to keep it from you. We were protecting you. That money. It is a lot of responsibility. We were just managing it until you were ready. Managing it? I asked. Is that what you call buying a boat? The boat was an investment, Dad blurted out. It retains value. We were going to sell it later and put the money back. It was a liquidity strategy. And my tuition? I asked. The $50,000 Grandpa gave you? Was that a liquidity strategy too? Dad opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish on a hook. And the loan, I said. The word hung heavy in the air. The $150,000 loan against the house. The one with my name on it. The one with my signature on it. Rose, listen, Dad said, stepping forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. That was a misunderstanding, a clerical error. I told the bank. I told them to put you as a beneficiary, not a cosigner. They messed up the paperwork. And the notary? I asked. Did she mess up too? Or did Mom just wear a wig and sign my name? Mom gasped. How dare you? I would never. Stop lying. I slammed my hand against the mattress. The pain in my head spiked, but the adrenaline masked it. Just stop lying to me for 5 minutes. Sss. I am 22 years old. I am not stupid. I know what you did. We did it for the family, Dad shouted, finally losing his cool. For the family. Rose, we were drowning. The business was under. The house was underwater. The wedding was costing a fortune. We needed cash. We needed a bridge loan. And you? You had the credit. You had the clean slate. We were going to pay it back before you ever knew. We were protecting you from the stress. You committed fraud, Grandpa said. That is not protection. That is a felony. It is not fraud if she is family, Dad yelled, his face turning purple. She is my daughter. What is hers is mine. That is how family works. That is not how the law works, Grandpa said coldly. Dad ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small room. He looked frantic. He looked like a trapped animal. Look, Dad said, turning to me. Rose, sweetie, listen, we can fix this. We can fix all of it, but I need you to sign something. Just one little form. It is a retroactive authorization. It just tells the bank that you knew about the loan, that you gave verbal consent. If you sign it, The fraud investigation goes away. The bank backs off. We keep the house. We pay for the wedding. And I promise, I swear on my life, I will pay off the loan myself." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He had brought it with him. He had come to the hospital prepared to make me an accomplice to his crime. "Just sign it," he pleaded, holding it out. "For the family, please." I looked at the paper. Then I looked at him. "No," I said. "Rose," Mom said, her voice turning hard. "Don't be selfish. If you don't sign that, your father could go to jail. Do you want that? Do you want to send your father to prison?" "I didn't commit the crime," I said. "He did." "You ungrateful little—" Sloane started, stepping forward. "Actually," Dad interrupted, his eyes wild. "Actually, there is another way. I was talking to the lawyer yesterday, while you were asleep." He looked at me with a desperate, terrifying hope. "I tried to get the doctors to sign a competency waiver," Dad said. "Because of the brain surgery, I told them you weren't in your right mind. I told them I needed emergency power of attorney to handle your affairs while you were incapacitated." The room went silent. I stared at him. "You did what?" I whispered. "I had to," Dad cried. "If I had power of attorney, I could have signed the authorization myself. I could have fixed the loan before you even woke up. I was trying to save us." "You were trying to silence me," I said. "You were trying to take control of my legal voice while I was in a coma so you could cover your tracks." "It was a strategy," Dad insisted. "But the doctors refused. They said your grandfather had already blocked it." I looked at Grandpa. He nodded slowly. "He tried," Grandpa said. "He called the hospital administrator 3 times while you were in the ICU. He didn't ask if you were waking up. He asked if he could legally sign documents for you." That was it. The final thread, the last tiny frayed rope that connected me to them, snapped. "Get out," I said. "Rose," Mom started. "Get out," I screamed. My voice broke, raw and painful. "Get out of my room. Get out of my life." "You can't kick us out," Dad said, puffing up his chest. "We are your parents. We are your next of kin. We make the decisions here." "Not anymore," I said. I reached for the call button on the side of the bed and pressed it. "I have already signed the paperwork," I said, my voice dropping back to that cold, dead calm. "This morning, with the nurse, I removed you from my HIPAA release. I removed you as my medical proxies. I removed you as my emergency contacts." I pointed at Grandpa. "Walter Wallace is my proxy," I said. "He makes the decisions. He sees the charts. You see nothing." "You can't do that," Dad spat. "I am an adult," I said. "I am 22. I am the legal owner of the June Wallace Trust, and I am the victim of your identity theft. I can do whatever I want." The door opened. 2 security guards stood there, flanked by the nurse from the morning shift. "Is there a problem here, Ms. Wallace?" the guard asked. "Yes," I said, looking straight at my father. "These people are bothering me. They are not on my visitor list. Please remove them." "Rose," Mom shrieked, "we are your parents." "Please escort them out," I said to the guard. The guard stepped into the room. "Sir, ma'am, you need to leave. Now." Dad looked at me. His face was a mask of pure hatred. The mask had slipped completely. There was no love there. There was only the anger of a parasite that had been ripped away from its host. "You are making a mistake," Dad hissed. "You are going to need us one day, and we won't be there." "You weren't there when I needed you yesterday," I said. "I think I will be fine." Sloane grabbed her yellow bag. "You are dead to me. Rose, you are ruining my wedding." "I hope the cake is worth it," I said. They were ushered out. I heard Mom sobbing as they walked down the hallway, a loud, performative wail meant to garner sympathy from the nurses. The door closed. The silence returned. I slumped back against the pillows. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a crushing exhaustion. Tessa sat down on the edge of the bed and hugged my legs. She was crying silently. Grandpa walked over to the window. He looked out at the parking lot, watching them leave. "They aren't going to stop," Grandpa said quietly. "Brad is desperate. Desperate men do dangerous things. He will try to contest the trust. He will try to claim you are mentally unstable because of the surgery. He will sue you for the loan." "Let him try," I said, but my voice was weak. "We need to end this," Grandpa said. He turned away from the window. "We cannot wait for the lawyers to send letters. We need to cut the head off the snake." "How?" I asked. "I spoke to Dr. Aris," Grandpa said. "He said you are stable. He said if I take responsibility, he will sign discharge papers for a few hours tomorrow." "Discharge?" I asked. "Where are we going?" "Not a hospital," Grandpa said. "And not a lawyer's office. Not yet." He walked over to the bed and placed his hand on my shoulder. "I am going to take you to the bank," he said. "The main branch downtown, the one where your grandmother's safe deposit box is still located. There is one more thing inside it. One thing I didn't bring with me." "What is it?" "The evidence," Grandpa said. "June didn't just leave money. Rose, she left a diary. She wrote down everything. Every time Brad asked for money, every lie he told, every time they neglected you. She kept a record for 20 years. He looked at me with a fierce protectiveness. "We are going to get that diary," Grandpa said. "And then we are going to invite them to a meeting, and we are going to show them exactly what happens when you try to bury a Wallace." "Tomorrow?" I asked. "Tomorrow," Grandpa said. "Get some sleep, Rosie. You are going to need your strength. Tomorrow, we go to war." Leaving the hospital felt less like a liberation and more like an evacuation. I walked out of the sliding glass doors of St. Briar Medical Center at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. The sun was aggressively bright. Reflecting off the asphalt of the parking lot, I blinked, shielding my eyes. The world looked exactly the same as it had when I entered it 3 days ago, but the axis had shifted. The colors were sharper. The noise of the traffic was louder. And I was no longer the daughter of Brad and Kara Wallace. I was a legal entity. I was a liability. I was a stranger. "Easy," Grandpa Walter said, gripping my elbow. "Don't try to be a hero. Lean on me." I leaned. My legs felt like they were made of damp cardboard. The physical recovery from brain surgery was not a straight line. It was a series of small, exhausting battles. My head still throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache, and the incision site under the bandage itched maddeningly. "Where is the car?" I asked. "Tessa is bringing it around," Grandpa said. He didn't drive me back to the colonial house on Maple Avenue. We didn't even drive past it. I had given explicit instructions. I never wanted to see that manicured lawn or those white pillars again. I didn't want my clothes. I didn't want my books. Everything inside those walls was tainted by the fraud they had committed to keep them. Instead, we drove to the other side of town. Grandpa and I had spent the previous afternoon, between naps and police statements, looking at listings online. We found a studio apartment on the 3rd floor of a converted brick building near the university. It was small. It had a single window that looked out onto a fire escape and a brick wall. The floorboards were scratched, and the radiator clanked. It was perfect. "It is not much," Grandpa said as he unlocked the door. Ushering me inside, the air smelled of lemon polish and old wood. "But the rent is paid for 6 months, out of the trust. Your money, Rose, legally and rightfully yours." I walked into the center of the room. It was empty except for a mattress on the floor, a desk Tessa had scavenged from a thrift store, and a single chair. "It is mine," I whispered. I sat down on the mattress. For the first time in 22 years, I was in a room where no one expected me to perform. No one needed me to plan a wedding. No one needed me to be the easy child. "I will go get the groceries," Grandpa said, sensing I needed a moment. "Tessa is parking the car. She will be up in a minute." He left. I lay back on the mattress and stared at the ceiling. There were no water stains. There were no mood boards. It was just a ceiling. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I had been ignoring it for 24 hours. Tessa burst through the door a moment later, carrying 2 bags of takeout and a look of militant determination. She kicked the door shut with her heel and dropped the bags on the desk. "Okay," she announced. "New rules. I am the gatekeeper. You are the VIP. No one gets to the VIP unless they go through security, and I am security." She held out her hand. "Phone," she commanded. I handed it to her. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I am filtering," she said. "If it is miles from the cafe, I will read it to you. If it is the university confirming your teaching assistant position, I will read it to you. If it is the gruesome twosome or the bridezilla, I am archiving it for the lawyers." She sat on the floor next to me and scrolled, her face twisted in disgust. "Your mom sent an email," Tessa said. Subject line, "Moving forward with love." "Read it," I said. I needed to know the shape of their manipulation. Tessa cleared her throat, adopting a mock-sincere tone. "Dearest Rose, we are devastated that you have chosen to isolate yourself during this recovery. We understand that the surgery has left you confused and emotional. We forgive you for the hurtful things you said at the hospital. We know that wasn't really you. It was the medication talking." Tessa paused to make a gagging noise. "Regarding the paperwork you mentioned, your father and I want to sit down and explain the context. It is not what it looks like. We were building a future for all of us. Please don't let a misunderstanding about finances destroy this family. We love you. Please come home. We can't have you living in some squalid apartment when you are sick." "Squalid," I repeated, looking around my clean, quiet studio. She called my freedom squalid. "She is terrified," Tessa said. She didn't mention the loan fraud. She didn't mention the forged signature. She just called it a misunderstanding about finances. That is lawyer speak for, "Please don't sue us." "And Dad?" 12 missed calls, Tessa said, and 3 voicemails. I listened to the first one. He sounds tight. You know that voice he gets when he is trying not to scream? He said he is concerned about your mental capacity, and that he is consulting with specialists to ensure you are making sound decisions. He is trying to build a case for conservatorship, I said, the realization settling over me like a cold blanket. He wants to prove I am brain damaged so he can annul the trust transfer and take control back. He can try, Tessa said darkly. But you are the valedictorian. You are a teaching assistant. You have a brain surgeon who will testify you are sharp as a tack. He is grasping at straws. And Sloane? Tessa hesitated. She bit her lip. Show me, I said. You don't want to see it, Rose. I need to see it. It is evidence. Tessa sighed and turned the screen toward me. It was a Facebook status update posted 2 hours ago. Sloane Wallace is feeling heartbroken. It is funny how money changes people. You think you know someone. You think they are your sister. You think they care about family. But the second they get a little bit of cash, they turn on you. They forget who raised them. They forget who supported them. Some people would rather see their family on the street than share their inheritance. Sad world we live in. Family over money betrayal, greed below it. The comments were filled with her friends. The same girls who had laughed at me at the party. OMG, so true, babe. Stay strong. Money reveals character. Clearly she has none. Karma will get her. I looked at the words. Karma will get her. She is spinning the narrative, I said calmly. She knows the house is at risk because of the loan. So she is painting me as the greedy sister who is evicting them, rather than the victim of identity theft. Do you want me to reply? Tessa asked, her thumb hovering over the keypad. I can destroy her in 3 sentences. I have screenshots of her asking you to pay for her Uber while she was wearing Gucci shoes. No, I said. Don't engage. Screenshot it, save it to the folder, date and timestamp. Rose, Tessa groaned. You are no fun. I want blood. We are not going for blood. Tessa, I said, closing my eyes. We are going for the jugular, and you don't do that with a Facebook comment. Later that evening, Grandpa Walter returned. He brought soup, bread, and a heavy leather satchel. He looked different. The exhaustion was still there, etched into the deep lines of his face, but there was a new energy about him. He moved with purpose. He set the food down and pulled a chair up to the mattress. "How is the head?" he asked. "Clear," I said. "It hurts, but it is clear." "Good," Grandpa said, "because you need to read this." He opened the satchel. He didn't pull out the diary he had mentioned before. Instead, he pulled out a single, thick envelope. It was yellowed with age, sealed with red wax that had cracked over time. "Your grandmother wrote this 3 days before she died," Grandpa said softly. "She made me promise not to open it unless the worst-case scenario happened." "What is the worst-case scenario?" I asked. "She called it the abandonment protocol," Grandpa said. I took the envelope. My name was written on the front in Grandma June's elegant, looping cursive. To my Rose. I broke the wax. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from anticipation. Inside was a single sheet of linen paper. "My dearest Rose, if you are reading this, then my heart is broken, because it means that the people who were supposed to protect you have failed in the most fundamental way. I have watched you grow, my darling. I have watched you become quiet to survive. I have watched you make yourself small so there would be room for their egos. I know your father. I know he is weak. And I know your mother is hungry for things that cannot love her back. I have left you the money and the trust to give you wings, but I know that money alone is not enough to protect you from them. They will try to take it. They will try to guilt you. They will use the word family like a weapon. So, I have added a clause to the deed of the family estate." I looked up at Grandpa. "The deed? You mean the house?" "Keep reading," Grandpa said. "The house on Maple Avenue, the one you grew up in, the one your father believes he owns, was purchased with my money. When I passed, I left the title to your father. But it is a conditional title. It is held in a life estate, subject to the care and competency clause. The clause states, if Bradley Wallace or Kara Wallace are found to be negligent in the medical or physical care of their children, specifically resulting in life-threatening harm or abandonment during a medical crisis, the life estate is immediately terminated. In that event, the title of the property does not revert to the estate. It transfers directly, in full, to the victim of the negligence, if they left you, Rose, if they abandoned you when you were hurt to chase their own pleasure, then they do not own that house anymore. You do. Use this power, not to hurt them, but to save yourself. Build the life you deserve, a life where you are the priority. I love you. Always. Grandma June. I lowered the letter. The room was silent. Even the radiator stopped clanking. "They don't own the house," I whispered. "No," Grandpa said. "Brad has a life estate. It means he can live there as long as he takes care of the property and his family. But June knew. She knew he would screw up eventually. She just didn't think he would screw up this badly." "Does he know?" I asked. "Does he know about this clause?" "He knows there are conditions," Grandpa said. "But he never read the fine print. He was too arrogant. He thought negligence meant starving you or beating you. He didn't think it meant going to a spa while you were in brain surgery." "That is why they are frantic," I said. The final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. It is not just the loan fraud. It is the house. If I prove they abandoned me, which I can, with the flight records and the hospital logs, they lose the house. They are homeless. "And the loan they took out against the house?" Tessa asked, eyes wide. "The one with the forged signature?" "If the title transfers to Rose," Grandpa explained, "the collateral for that loan vanishes. The bank will call the loan immediately. Brad will be on the hook for the full $150,000, instantly. He will be bankrupt within 24 hours. I sat there, holding the letter. It felt warm in my hand. Grandma June hadn't just left me money. She had left me a loaded gun. She had looked 20 years into the future, seen exactly who her son was, and she had built a trap door for me to escape through. "So," Grandpa said, leaning forward. The question is, Rose, what do you want to do? I looked at the brick wall outside my window. I thought about the 4 weeks leading up to graduation. I thought about the headache I had hidden. I thought about the mood board. I thought about the phrase, "Don't be dramatic." I thought about the empty seats. I don't want to scream at them, I said softly. I don't want to fight with Sloan on Facebook. I don't want to hear Mom's fake apologies. I turned to Grandpa. I want to follow Grandma's instructions, I said. I want the truth, and I want what is mine. Grandpa nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a cell phone. He dialed a number. Arthur? He said into the phone. It is Walter. Yes, she is ready. Set it up. He paused, listening. No, Grandpa said, looking at me with a fierce pride. No negotiation. Tell them to be there at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Tell them if they are late. We file the police report for the forgery. He hung up. It is done, Grandpa said. 10 o'clock tomorrow, at the offices of Sterling. Hart, Associates. Arthur's nephew is ready for us. Sterling. Hart, Associates, I repeated. It sounded official. It sounded like a place where emotions went to die and facts were the only currency. Get some sleep, kid, Grandpa said, standing up. You have big day tomorrow. You are going to become a homeowner. He kissed my forehead and left. Tessa locked the door behind him. She turned to me, her face serious. Are you sure you can do this? She asked. It is going to destroy them. Rose, they will have nothing. I looked at the letter one last time before folding it and placing it on the nightstand. They had everything, I said. They had a house. They had a boat. They had a daughter who would have done anything for them. They had a father who gave them his life savings. I lay down and pulled the blanket up to my chin. The pain in my head was still there, but it felt manageable now. It felt like a scar forming, rather than a wound opening. They chose to lose it, I said. I am just signing the paperwork. I closed my eyes. For the first time in months, the hum of anxiety in my chest was gone. I didn't dream of empty seats. I dreamed of a house that was quiet, and a key that fit only my hand. Tomorrow, the easy child would finally become the difficult woman, and I couldn't wait to introduce her to them. The conference room at Sterling, Hart, and Associates smelled of old money and new polish. It was a room designed to intimidate, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline and a mahogany table long enough to land a small aircraft on. I sat at the head of the table. On my right sat Grandpa Walter and Tessa. On my left sat David Hart, the pit bull in a suit that Grandpa had promised. He was a sharp-featured man in his 30s who looked like he ate contract disputes for breakfast. Across from us sat my parents and Sloan. They looked small, without the backdrop of their expensive home or the props of their performative lifestyle. They looked diminished. Mom was wearing dark sunglasses, likely to hide swollen eyes. Dad was drumming his fingers on the table, a nervous tick that echoed in the silence. Sloan was slumped in her chair, arms crossed, staring at a spot on the wall as if wishing she could teleport back to Iceland. Let us begin. Mister, Hart said. He didn't raise his voice, but the room instantly fell silent. He opened a leather binder. We are here to discuss the execution of the June Wallace Education Trust, as well as the immediate restructuring of the Wallace family estate. Mr. Hart announced. Restructuring? Dad interrupted, his voice tight. Now hold on. I am the executor of the estate. I haven't agreed to any restructuring. You were the executor, Mr. Hart corrected, sliding a document across the table. Until 3 days ago, when the beneficiary, Ms. Rose Wallace, met the conditions of the trust by graduating from an accredited university. That money is family money, Mom interjected, leaning forward. Her voice trembled. June meant for it to help all of us. Rose knows that. Rose, tell him, you know Grandma wanted us to be happy. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had asked about my credit score while I was in a coma. Grandma June wanted you to be responsible, I said calmly. She knew you weren't, so she made the trust irrevocable. Irrevocable? Sloane asked, frowning. It means, Mr. Hart explained, that the funds cannot be touched, borrowed, or transferred by anyone other than Rose. You cannot borrow it for a wedding. You cannot leverage it for a renovation. It is a closed vault, and Rose holds the only key. Dad's face reddened. We supported her for 22 years. We fed her. We clothed her. And now she's going to hoard $250,000 while her sister's wedding is falling apart? That is selfish. Selfish, Grandpa Walter repeated, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. Brad, you bought a boat with her tuition money. That was a loan, Dad shouted. It was theft. Mr. Hart cut in. But we are not here to discuss the tuition. That is water under the bridge. We are here to discuss the house. The atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew heavy. The house? Dad laughed nervously. What about the house? It is my house. My mother left it to me. She left you a life estate, Mr. Hart corrected. Do you know what that means, Mr. Wallace? It means I own it for my life, Dad said confidently. It means you have the right to live there. Mr. Hart said. Subject to conditions. Specifically, the care and competency clause. Mr. Hart opened the binder to a page marked with a red sticky note. June Wallace was a very prudent woman, the lawyer said. She included a provision. If the holder of the life estate is found to be negligent in the care of their dependents, specifically resulting in life-threatening harm or abandonment during a medical crisis, the life estate is terminated immediately. Dad stopped drumming his fingers. Mom took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were wide with terror. We didn't abandon her, Mom whispered. We came back. You came back after 72 hours, Mr. Hart said. He pulled out a stack of papers. We have the hospital logs. We have the timestamps of the missed calls. We have the record of Mr. Walter Wallace assuming medical proxy because the parents were unreachable and on a helicopter tour. We have the social media posts of you drinking champagne while your daughter was undergoing a craniotomy. Mr. Hart looked up. His eyes were cold. By the terms of your mother's will, Brad, you have forfeited the life estate. The title of the property on Maple Avenue transferred to Rose Wallace at 9 o'clock this morning. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Sloane made a small, choking sound. You own the house? I do, I said. So we are homeless? Mom shrieked, standing up. You are kicking your own parents onto the street? Sit down, Mrs. Wallace. Mr. Hart commanded. We haven't reached the worst part yet. Mom sat down slowly, her legs giving out. Since Rose now owns the house, Mr. Hart continued, she also has the right to audit any liens or encumbrances against the property. Which brings us to the home equity line of credit, taken out in October of last year. Dad put his head in his hands. He knew what was coming. Mr. Hart slid a single piece of paper across the mahogany surface. It was the loan application. This document lists Rose Wallace as a co-signer. Mr. Hart said, it bears a signature that looks remarkably like hers. However, we have Rose's passport records showing she was in Chicago on the date this document was notarized. Mr. Hart leaned forward, clasping his hands. This is bank fraud. Mr. Wallace, it is identity theft. It is a federal crime punishable by up to 30 years in prison and a fine of up to $1 million. Dad looked up. He was sweating profusely. His arrogance was gone, replaced by the raw, naked fear of a man watching his life disintegrate. Rose, Dad croaked. Rose, please. Don't, I said. I will go to jail, he whispered. Do you understand? I will go to federal prison. Is that what you want? You want your father in a cage? You put me in a cage for 22 years, I said softly. You put me in a cage of expectations. You made me small so you could feel big. And when I broke, You left me. I am sorry, Mom sobbed. We are so sorry. We will do anything. Just tell us what you want. I want the truth, I said. The truth? Dad asked, desperate. What truth? I want you to admit it, I said. I want you to admit that you didn't love me. You loved what I did for you. You loved the tax break. You loved the free labor. You loved the credit score. But you never loved me. Mom opened her mouth to protest, to spin another lie, but she looked at my face and stopped. She saw something there she had never seen before. She saw a wall. Dad started. He looked at the table. We were scared. We were drowning in debt. And you were always so strong. We thought you could handle it. We thought you wouldn't mind helping the family. I wasn't helping, I said. I was being cannibalized. Sloane suddenly slammed her hand on the table. So what happens to my wedding? She screamed. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. The deposits are paid with that loan money. If you call the loan, the money freezes. The vendors will walk. I have 200 guests coming in 8 weeks. Sloane, I said. No, she yelled. You are ruining everything. You are jealous. You have always been jealous because Mom and Dad liked me better. You are doing this to punish me. I am not doing this to punish you, I said calmly. I am doing this to protect myself. You are stealing my wedding. I am not stealing anything, I said. I looked her dead in the eye. I am just stopping you from robbing me. There is a difference. Sloane stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed. For the first time in her life, she was hearing the word no from the person who had always said yes. Sloane, Dad said quietly. Stop it. It is over. It is not over, Sloane cried. Rose, please, I have the dress. I have the venue. Please. I looked at my sister. I saw the fear in her eyes. It wasn't fear of losing me. It was fear of losing face. She didn't care about the sisterhood. She cared about the Instagram photos. I have a proposal, I said. Everyone looked at me. Mr. Hart has drawn up a settlement agreement, I said. Mr. Hart pushed a final stack of documents toward them. Here are the terms, I said. Number 1. Dad signs a confession regarding the forged signature. We do not file it with the police. We keep it in a safe deposit box. If you ever try to contact me, harass me, or claim any right to my assets again, we file it. It is your sword of Damocles. Dad nodded quickly. Done. I will sign it. Number 2, I continued. You will sell the boat. You will sell the second car. You will liquidate whatever assets you have left to pay down the principal of the fraudulent loan immediately. You will remove my name from the debt. We will, Mom said. We will sell it all. Number 3, I said. You have 30 days to vacate the house on Maple Avenue. 30 days? Mom gasped. Where will we go? I don't know, I said. You are resourceful. You will figure it out. Isn't that what you always told me? And number 4, I said, looking at Sloane. I will not seek repayment for the money you have already spent on the wedding deposits from the fraudulent loan. Consider it my wedding gift. But I will not pay a single cent more. If you want the flowers, you pay for them. If you want the cake, you buy it. The Bank of Rose is closed. Permanently. Sloane slumped back in her chair. She looked defeated, but relieved. She would have a smaller wedding, but she wouldn't be humiliated. Do we have a deal? I asked. Dad picked up the pen. His hand was shaking, but he didn't hesitate. He signed. Mom signed. Sloane sat with her arms crossed, refusing to touch the paper, but she nodded. Good, I said. I stood up. It is done. Mr. Hart said, gathering the papers. You are free. Rose, Grandpa Walter stood up with me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the manila envelope again. He took out one last item. It was a photograph. It was black and white, frayed at the edges. It showed a woman with kind eyes and hair pulled back in a messy bun. Grandma June. She was sitting on a porch swing, holding a baby. The baby was me. I was laughing, reaching for her nose. Grandpa handed it to me. "Turn it over," he said. I flipped the photo. On the back, in that same elegant cursive, were 2 sentences. "If you are reading this, it means you have survived, and now you are allowed to choose yourself." I stared at the words. For 22 years, I had chosen them. I had chosen their comfort over my needs. I had chosen their image over my reality. I had chosen their peace over my health, and I had almost died for it, but I had survived. I looked up. The tears finally came, but they weren't the hot, angry tears of the past few weeks. They were cool. They were cleansing. "Thank you, Grandpa," I whispered. "Let's go," Tessa said, grabbing my hand. "I need a burger, and you need a nap." I turned to leave. "Rose?" It was Mom. She was still sitting at the table, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. "Rose, wait," she said. Her voice was cracked. "What? What happens to us? We are family. Doesn't that mean anything?" I stopped. I didn't turn around. I looked at the door, at the bright sunlight spilling in from the hallway. "It means everything," I said. "That is why it hurts so much." I walked out. I walked through the lobby. I walked out the front doors of the building. The air outside was crisp. The sun was warm on my face. The noise of the city was a symphony of life. I took a deep breath. My head still hurt, just a little, a reminder of the battle I had fought. But my chest felt light. The weight was gone. The anvil I had been carrying for 2 decades had been left in that conference room. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I stopped on the sidewalk. Tessa and Grandpa paused, looking at me. I pulled out the phone, a text from Mom. "Mom, I am sorry. I really am. I don't know who I am without the money or the house. I think I want to go to therapy. I want to fix this." I looked at the message. A week ago, I would have rushed to comfort her. I would have typed back, "It is okay. Mom, we can work it out." I would have fixed it for her. But I wasn't that person anymore. I typed a reply. "When you do it for real, I will be listening. But until then, I am choosing myself." I hit send. Then, I turned off the phone. I looked at Tessa. I looked at Grandpa. "Where to?" Grandpa asked. "Home," I said. "My home." And as we walked down the street, 3 people bound by something stronger than blood, I realized that the empty seats at my graduation didn't matter anymore, because the seats next to me now were full, and for the first time in my life, that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to Rose's story. It was a long journey from that stage to this freedom, and I hope it reminded you that you are allowed to save yourself, even from the people who raised you. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from a quiet room, a busy bus, or maybe while working on your own dreams? Leave a comment below and let's share our stories. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to the Jane Revenge Stories channel, hitting that like button, and pressing the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, take care of yourselves.